Chapter 2176. Wenren Yu's grandfather was the previous family head of the Wenren family. He had intended to pass the position of family head to his son, but unfortunately, his son had accidentally died while training together, leaving behind the two brothers, Wenren Yu and Wenren Chuang. At that time, Wenren Yu and Wenren Chuang were still young. Wenren Yu was slightly older, but he was only 2 years old. Wenren Chuang was just born. Originally, if Wenren Yu's grandfather was safe and sound, the succession of power in the family could be completed smoothly. However, the old man was brave and fierce. He went into the deep mountain alone to hunt the strong beasts, and the result was that he lost his life. This time, the main branch was extremely weak, and the subsidiary branches seized the opportunity to seize power. However, Wenren Yu and Wenren Yu were nominally the future heads of the family, and there were still some old ministers who supported them. However, as time went by, the branch families grasped more and more power, and more old ministers were eliminated. This branch was represented by Great Elder Wenren Tang, who controlled more than 70% of the clan's economy. To support a family, money was of course the most important thing. Wenren Tang held the economic power, and the next step was to get rid of Wenren Yu and his brother. Since the main branch had no one, naturally the branch would take over. No matter what, they couldn't let the family break up. Now that Wenren Yu was 769 years old, he and his younger brother had encountered various kinds of accidents, no less than 500 times, and they would encounter them almost every year. If it wasn't for the help of a group of old people who were loyal to the main bloodline, they would have died a long time ago. However, as the influence of Wenren Hall grew, the situation of Wenren Yu and Wenren Yu became more and more difficult. Many elders also realized that it was impossible for the two brothers to make a comeback, so they gave up the idea of supporting the orthodox family. Therefore, Wenren Yu had no choice but to go all out. Otherwise, it wouldn't be long before the two of them would die in an accident. After listening to his words, Ling Jianxue slowly nodded and said, "If I can get out of this predicament, I will definitely help you ascend to the position of patriarch." "It's not me, it's my brother," Wenren Yu emphasized. "Why don't you want this position?" Ling Jianxue was curious. "Because I am more interested in martial art, and I want to join the Heaven Saint Palace," Wenren Yu said. Ling Jianxue was slightly startled and blurted out, "Your heart is really big." If he stayed in the Wenren clan, he would only be the boss of a small town. But if he joined a great force like the Heaven Saint Palace, he would at least be able to advance into the Severing Mundane tier. Compared to the Wenren clan, which was only at the Genesis tier, the situation was much better. How could the Genesis tier compare to the Severing Mundane tier? There was an endless gap between them. That was why Ling Jianxue said that Wenren Yu had a big heart. Wenren Yu remained silent, her gaze was bright, and it revealed a form of resolution. This time, he was taking the risk of offending the Dragon Universe Palace. If the Dragon Universe Palace were to find them, then he and his brother would be consigned to eternal damnation, and nothing else would be mentioned. This was called seeking wealth amidst danger. Ling Jianxue nodded and said, "I will definitely repay your kindness of saving my life. I can solve the problem of your brother sitting on the patriarch's position with my own strength. But if you want to enter the Heaven Saint Palace, it will be somewhat difficult. I can only do my best. I believe it won't be difficult to become an outer disciple." Heaven Saint Palace was an 8th stage celestial king tier sect, and it was unknown how many people racked their brains to enter it. Even though Ling Jianxue had become a core disciple, she was only qualified to introduce people to the outer sect. Sure, Wenren Yu nodded. He had the confidence to stand out. The two of them stopped the communication of divine sense, because there was someone approaching, and communication of divine sense was not very safe. If they were too close, they would still be stolen by others. Thankfully, that person only circled around once before leaving, allowing the two of them to breathe a sigh of relief. "This is a tree that my brother and I would often play hide and seek here when we were young, and we accidentally discovered this tree." Wenren Yu was slightly proud. Though this tree is withered, it is considerably mystical, and has the effect of concealing the heavens and concealing the earth. Ling Jianxue meanwhile gave an "oh." No wonder those people from the Dragon Universe Palace searched over and over again, but always turned a blind eye to this tree. Xiao, two figures landed. They were respectively an old man wearing a purple gold crown, and a middle-aged man dressed in a yellow dragon robe. The old man swung his hand, and there was instantly an additional person on the ground. He should have stored this person in his spatial god tool. It is here? The old man asked. My lord, it is this tree. The person on the ground crawled up, his head full of white hair, and pointed directly at the withered tree where Ling Jianshui and Wenren Yu were. He was the great elder of the Wenren family, Wenren Tang. The purple gold crown old man was the palace master of the Dragon Universe Palace, Sui Yuanliang, and the man dressed in a yellow dragon robe was the second palace master, Tang Tao. Ling Jianshui and Wenren Yu's complexion instantly paled. They didn't think that such a hidden place would actually be discovered by others. Wenren Tang sneered in his heart. He also discovered the existence of Ling Jianshui and Chen Shuangshuang by chance, but he knew that the cultivation of these two was far above his own. Not to mention Chen Shuangshuang. Even the heavily injured Ling Jianshui could easily kill him. He went to report, wanting to curry favor with the Dragon Universe Palace, but who knew that Wenren Yu would interfere and rescue them first, causing him to almost be hacked to death by Sui Yuanliang. He couldn't find Ling Jianshui anywhere. What should he do? He had a sudden inspiration and thought of this. A long time ago, he had once played the role of a kind father, wanting to deceive the trust of Wenren Yu and brother Wenren Yu, and obtain the method to open some crucial secret treasures of the clan, and he had indeed succeeded. He had once followed behind these two brothers, and discovered the wonders of this tree. Of course, with his strength, it was impossible for the Wenren Yu and brother Wenren Yu to discover anything wrong. So, Wenren Yu thought that this place was absolutely safe, but in reality it was not. Sui Yuanliang moved. Pa! A palm landed, and the withered tree instantly split into pieces, but Ling Jianshui and Wenren Yu inside were completely unharmed. For an immortal palace tier elite, this was naturally a small matter. Little brat, as expected, you're hiding here. Sui Yuanliang roared with laughter, his eyes radiating with killing intent. You actually dared to steal my cold moonlight sun sword. You're truly seeking death. Otherwise, you're a true disciple of an 8th level Celestial King tier sect. Why would I even lay a finger on you? Hearing these words, Wenren Tang was so frightened that he almost sat on the ground. What? Ling Jianshui was actually a true disciple of a Celestial King tier sect. It was over. If Ling Jianshui died here, would a Celestial King descend and raze the Wenren family clan to the ground? Yet he was scared silly. How could a mighty Celestial King move against a small clan of Genesis tier? And in fact, the person he needed to worry about the most was Sui Yuanliang. Since he knew Ling Jianshui's identity, how could it be that he would still let him leave alive? Now, hand over the cold moonlight sun sword, and I can grant you a quick death. Sui Yuanliang said proudly. Ling Jianshui smiled freely, and said to Wenren Yu, Come, I can't fulfill my promise. Wenren Yu was incredibly open-minded and said, In any case, I couldn't save you, so you didn't break your promise. The two of them looked at each other, and laughed loudly at the same time, actually disregarding life and death. Brat, do you not understand? Sui Yuanliang humphed, and stretched out a hand to grab Ling Jianshui. Forget it, I'll take it myself. A large hand grabbed over, covering the sky and covering the sun. Ling Jianshui gritted his teeth. Even if he only had the strength of an ant, he would still fight back with all his might. In his dictionary, there was no such thing as accepting one's fate. Just at this moment, a flash of light shot over, and greeted the large hand that Sui Yuanliang had struck out. You're dreaming. Today was 5 chapters, and he was going to leave on Monday. About 5 days, the updates would not change, and it would still be 4 chapters a day. Chapter 2177. Boom! A palm shot over like a raging wave. There was also a frightening aura, as if a great emperor had angered the son of heaven. The palm arrived, and the large hand that Sui Yuanliang had shot out immediately crumbled. A figure appeared right after, landing in front of Ling Jianshui and Wenren Yu. It was Ling Han. His face was filled with killing intent. and the regulations of slaughter had materialized, floating around him, as if they could destroy the heavens and earth. At first, Sui Yuanliang was indifferent. Though his attack had been neutralized, he naturally could not use his full power against a mere fourth severance. Thus, this attack had only used less than 1/10,000th of his power. Thus, it was not strange that Ling Han could neutralize it. He could feel that his battle prowess was only at the level of fourth secret, or at most peak stage of fourth secret. He had not reached the level of fifth secret. However, when Ling Han appeared, he could not remain calm. In fact, his mouth had even formed a circle. Heavenly Soul. Fuck, this person who possessed battle prowess of fourth secret was actually a heavenly soul. How was this possible? Sui Yuanliang's mind was instantly filled with curses. He felt as if he was dreaming, and everything was so surreal. How could he be a heavenly soul? How was this possible? The difference between a dividing soul tier and an immortal palace tier was like the difference between heaven and earth. No matter how talented you were, you could not possibly surpass this natural chasm. But the reality was that Ling Han had neutralized his attack and had battle prowess of fourth secret. Old thing, you're seeking death. Ling Han's killing intent boiled. He shot out, and the regulations of lightning and regulations of time were activated at the same time. He quickly appeared in front of Sui Yuanliang and swung out a punch. No matter how shocked and shocked Sui Yuanliang was, he could not allow Ling Han to attack him. He hurriedly waved his right hand to meet Ling Han's attack. His instincts as a cultivator allowed this attack to still possess extremely powerful might even when he was in a daze. Pung! After this attack, he only slightly tilted his body back, while Ling Han was directly sent flying. As expected, the other party only had battle prowess of fourth secret, and was no match for him at all. Sui Yuanliang calmed down a little. At least he had the upper hand in terms of combat power. However, he could not hide the uneasiness in his heart. This was because Ling Han was too monstrous. He was merely a heavenly soul, but he had the combat power of a fourth secret expert. In fact, he had even reached the peak of fourth secret. What exactly was going on? How can there be such a monster in this world? The void spirit space was activated, and Ling Han instantly charged back. With a flip of his palm, boundless sword chi swept out. This was the heaven-extinguishing 9 swords, a celestial king technique. Sui Yuanliang hurriedly parried. He had the advantage of the realm, so he easily dissolved Ling Han's attack. However, he didn't relax in the slightest because not only did Ling Han possess a heaven-defying battle prowess, his physique was extremely heaven-defying as well. Even though he was sent flying time and time again, he wasn't injured in the slightest, and was still full of vigor as he fiercely attacked him. This was very strange. His battle prowess was clearly stronger, but he was actually the one constantly defending. He had no choice but to defend. Ling Han's speed was too fast, and his attacks were also too quick. When he attacked, Ling Han could attack 5 times or even more. As a result, even though his battle prowess was stronger, he could only defend and couldn't counterattack. Sui Yuanliang's defense was watertight, and his life was not in danger. However, after the shock in his heart faded, he was extremely furious. He, a 5th secret expert, was actually being suppressed and beaten by a heavenly soul junior. Boom! He activated a powerful technique. 8 green flames surged out of his body and formed the shape of an 8 trigram. Fire mountain quake! He roared loudly. Celestial talismans appeared one after another, and they had supreme uses. Ling Han was unafraid. He directly passed through the flames and shot out another punch. He possessed the source of fire in the heaven and the earth. As long as his opponent's battle prowess didn't exceed his by too much, fire-type attacks would be like blowing dust when they landed on his body. They were completely ineffective. At this moment he was extremely furious. He only had one thought, and that was to beat this bastard in front of him until he exploded. He actually wanted to kill his own son. Boom! The 9 source powers of the heaven and the earth in his body boiled at the same time. As if they had sensed Ling Han's fury, they released the fury of the heaven and the earth. Sui Yuanliang couldn't help but be dumbstruck. His opponent was clearly only at the heavenly soul tier, but the aura he exuded was like that of the Son of Heaven, a child of the heaven and the earth that could not be blasphemed. He could only kneel down. Otherwise, he would be making an enemy of the heaven and the earth, and there would be a great disaster. Who exactly was this fellow? If his opponent was a celestial king, then so be it. Celestial kings controlled the heavenly Tao, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that he was a child of the heavens. However, he was at the heavenly soul tier. What kind of joke was this? Ling Han's fighting spirit rose endlessly. At this moment, he forgot about the source powers of the heaven and the earth and the power of rules. He simply punched out, intending to completely vent his fury. Sui Yuanliang was not the only one who was dumbstruck. Tang Tao, Ling Jianshui, and Wenren Yu were all dumbfounded. However, Wenren Yu's strength was the weakest, and his level was the lowest. He only knew that Ling Han was very powerful, but he didn't know what this power represented. Tang Tao and Ling Jianshui, on the other hand, were really dumbfounded. Which of them didn't know the gap between the dividing soul tier and the immortal palace tier? Moreover, Sui Yuanliang was a fifth secret elite, and could even easily crush a fourth secret elite. Yet he actually couldn't do anything to a mere dividing soul tier. He seemed to have the advantage in battle prowess, but in reality, he was passively taking a beating. Even if they saw it with their own eyes, they still couldn't believe it. And the one who was the most shocked was still Ling Jianshui. He had been brought to the celestial realm when he was young, and had only spent a few years with his mother, Helian Xuanxue, before he was sent to the Heaven Saint Palace. Thus he still had some impression of Helian Xuanxue, but he really didn't have any impression of Ling Han. Thus, he naturally wouldn't have thought that this man who had suddenly jumped out to save his life, and who was so enraged that he was about to explode, was actually his biological father. He had a strange expression on his face. Why did this heaven-defying freak want to help him, and even look as if his son had been beaten? Did he really have to go that far? He can't be your biological father, right? Wenren Yu murmured. Because Ling Han was too godly, he also gradually relaxed. He thought that he might have resolved this dangerous situation, and was also in the mood to crack a joke. How is that possible? Ling Jianshui shook his head without hesitation. What a joke! His father was still in a small world, and even if more than 10,000 years had passed, he probably had only just successfully opened the sky and entered the ancient realm. Whether he had reached the mountain river tier now was a question. It wasn't that he didn't respect his father, but it was decided by the environment that Ling Han was in. It was useless no matter how exceptional a prodigy you were. Cultivation naturally couldn't do without resources. You don't say, you really are a bit similar to him. Wenren Yu was joking at first, but staring closely at Ling Han, he became curious. Ling Jianshui shook his head, naturally not believing in the slightest. Jianshui. At this moment, a voice was heard from behind. Ling Jianshui's heart trembled, and he blurted out without turning his head. Mother. Meanwhile, Wenren Yu clapped her hands. You still say it's not your father? Your mother is here. So is your father still far away? Hunyou and the others appeared, and Helian Xuanxue directly rushed out, running towards her son. Ling Jianshui wanted to move, but suddenly coughed out a mouthful of blood. Junior brother Ling, don't be anxious. Chen Shuangshuang also rushed out, and together with Helian Xuanxue, helped Ling Jianshui up. Mother, why have you come? Ling Jianshui's expression was filled with curiosity, and more so with worry. For the sake of that sword, the Dragon Universe Palace was determined to silence him by killing him. Ling, what did you call her, mother? Chen Shuangshuang was also quite thick-skinned, and only now did she suddenly realize that something was wrong. Chapter 2178. Wasn't she a distant relative? How did she become a mother? Ling Jianshui thought of Chen Shuangshuang, and felt even more anxious. Senior sister, why didn't you return to the sect? It's too dangerous here. Fuck, now that you have a wife, you don't want me anymore. Helian Xuanxue had a son and a husband to hold the fort. Although her worry had not disappeared, it was much better than before, and she had the mood to think about other things. She grabbed her son's ear and said, Wow, don't you care about your mother? Hee. Ling Jianshui could only laugh foolishly. That's right, you're too wrong. Chen Shuangshuang chimed in. Care about your mother first? It's over. With such a beautiful sister, Won't I have to call her aunt in the future? Her face was full of grief and indignation. Playing with beautiful women was her greatest pleasure. But now there was a beautiful woman that she could not call sister, which made her sad. Ling Jianshue's face was also full of depression. Why was this senior sister so stupid? Wenren Yu, on the other hand, had a look of realization on her face. Wait, who is this? He's too fierce. Chen Shuangshuang was insensitive and quickly forgot about this matter. She pointed at Ling Han, and the expression on her face was as if she had seen a ghost. A heavenly soul was actually fighting against a fifth secret expert, and he even had the upper hand in the battle, suppressing the fifth secret expert. Although he would inevitably be sent flying every time he was hit. But so what if he was sent flying? He was not injured at all, and he immediately attacked back. He was simply like a god of war. He was too awesome. I don't know either, Ling Jianshue muttered. Paholian Sun Shue lightly patted her son's head and scolded. That's your father. Pooh. Ling Jianshue and Chen Shuangshuang spurted out at the same time. My father. Ling Jianshue's face was full of astonishment. Isn't my father still opening the sky in the small world? What sort of genius is your father? He has long arrived in the immortal realms. It's just that the immortal realms are simply too vast. That's why he spent over 10,000 years before he managed to find us. Helian Xuanxue spoke with pride, filled with worship towards Ling Han. The corner of Ling Jianshue's mouth couldn't help but twitch. As a genius, he was still quite proud. He had once thought that after his cultivation was successful, he would enter the small world to help his father split open the sky. Or if Ling Han had already succeeded in splitting open the sky, he would leave behind many things from the immortal domain in the ancient world to help his father soar into the sky. Even though immortal domain had clear rules that no one could bring back a single person, tree, or blade of grass from ancient realms or small worlds, great powers could still make a slight exception, occasionally bringing a few up. No one would look into it. Of course, one could only occasionally bring a few up, or else there would be a group of ninth heaven celestial king tier sects attacking, and no matter how great one's power was, they would only be annihilated. In Ling Jianshue's mind, he had only started cultivating a few decades later than Ling Han, but the environment they were in was completely different. The cultivation resources he had obtained were something that Ling Han could not even compare to, and could not even be imagined. Then, his realm would instantly surpass Ling Han, and he would leave his father far behind. However, the reality was completely different. Not only was Ling Han's realm higher than his battle prowess was even more domineering to the ninth heaven. Heavenly soul, able to rival the fifth secret. Holy shit! This was his biological father. Your father is really amazing, Chen Shuangshuang murmured. She had been shocked by Ling Han before, and now she was shocked again. Fifth secret. Ling Han's limit was actually to rival a fifth secret elite. I know, Ling Jianshue replied like an idiot. Even now, he still could not believe that there was a dividing soul tier that could be awesome to such an extent, and this super awesome person was actually his father. Tang Tao's gaze swept over, his eyes slightly hesitant. He was considering whether to make a move or not. Originally, this was not a problem. They were merely dividing soul tier and severing mundane tier juniors, and he, a great elite of the fourth secret, could take them all down with a stretch of his hand. But now, he was wary of Ling Han. Could Sui Yuanliang take down Ling Han? That was impossible. Even if Ling Han could not do anything to Sui Yuanliang, if he wanted to leave, who could stop him? And once Ling Han escaped, then the matter of them slaughtering a disciple of Heaven Saint Palace today would definitely not be concealed. When a celestial king was enraged, the heaven and earth would change color. What more an eighth heaven sect? The Dragon Universe Palace was definitely finished. Then what was he still doing in the Dragon Universe Palace? Though he was the second palace master, in reality, he was only cooperating with Sui Yuanliang, and they were just using each other. How could he send himself to the grave because of Sui Yuanliang? Thinking up to here, he immediately made up his mind, and directly turned around, leaving confidently. Tang Tao! Sui Yuanliang roared angrily. Tang Tao did not stop, and instantly exited the dense forest, vanishing without a trace. He only knew that the cold moonlight sun sword was of great importance to Sui Yuanliang. But the latter did not reveal anything about its specific use at all. Wanting him to risk his life was a joke. Ling Jianshui, Chen Shuangshuang, and Wenren were even more furious, because they knew that Tang Tao had been forced to leave by Ling Han, a fourth secret elite. Meanwhile, Wenren Tang's whole body trembled. He discovered that he had latched onto the wrong thigh. Heavens, Ling Jianshui was not only a disciple of an 8th heaven celestial king tier sect, but also the son of this freakishly strong guy. He actually betrayed Ling Jianshui. Did he still have a way out? He sat paralyzed on the ground, feeling that any desire for power had left him. Now, he only wanted to live the rest of his life peacefully. However, Tang Tao had just left when the people of the Dragon Universe Palace arrived. Palace Master, 19th Young Master has been killed. It was this person. Elder Qing Qing has been killed. The 3rd Palace Master has been killed. These people reported the news one by one, all pointing directly at Ling Han. This time, Sui Yuanliang was also furious. I haven't killed your son, but you have killed my son and the 3rd Palace Master first. And you still have the appearance of a victim? Brat, I will destroy you. He roared, and with a wave of his right hand, there was already a tattered piece of paper in his hand. Moreover, it was even charred, and only a small part of it was left untouched. But when this piece of paper was taken out, it emitted a might that could suppress the heavens, as if it was an imperial edict written by a celestial king, able to command the world. Suppress! Sui Yuanliang revealed a look of reluctance. This law edict was something he had obtained by chance, and it was tattered. Once he used it, he most likely would not be able to use it again. But if he did not kill Ling Han, he would not be able to conceal the fact that he had plotted to kill a disciple of Heaven Saint Palace. At that time, the Dragon Universe Palace would be destroyed, and he would die as well. No matter how awesome a treasure was, what use would it be? Moreover, he was determined to obtain Yulong Qingyang's sword. Ling Han, however, had reached a juncture. Under the drive of anger, he had forgotten everything else, and only had the thought of fighting. And under such a state, he gradually cultivated a fist technique. This could not be considered a secret technique, because it was merely a kind of aura, a kind of will. No matter what was blocking in front of him, it would all be shattered with a single punch. However, he always felt that something was lacking, causing this fist technique to be unable to unleash its true might. It was only when this tattered piece of paper appeared that an intense chill suddenly rose up in Ling Han, causing him to suddenly realize that what he lacked was a kind of oppressive feeling between life and death. His physique was too strong, which was admittedly a good thing, but because he did not have to worry about the problem of life and death, he could not carefully experience the tension and oppression of battle. When this feeling arose, he was completely enlightened. He swung out a fist, and his anger soared to the heavens. Chapter 2180. Ling Han was puzzled at first, but after thinking for a while, he understood. Sui Yuanliang activated the power of darkness, which made him the enemy of this world, and the power of the Celestial King represented this world. So after this attack was activated, who would the power of the Celestial King attack? In other words, Sui Yuanliang courted his own death. A sin committed by heaven can be forgiven, but a sin committed by oneself cannot be forgiven. Ling Han shook his head. He didn't expect that Sui Yuanliang would actually die in his own hands, which made him feel that his hatred was still unresolved. He attacked ruthlessly, killing all the disciples of the Dragon Universe Palace present. Father. Ling Jianshui looked at his father somewhat blankly, and the impression of Ling Han in his mind naturally collapsed. What he had to accept now was this heroic and divine father. Ling Han took a step forward, and held his son in his arms, hugging him tightly. Ling Jianshui was somewhat at a loss. He had never been hugged by a man, let alone a man he had just seen. But after a while, he felt the deep affection in Ling Han's hug, which made him unconsciously burst into tears. Father, he called out again, full of childish admiration. Since he could remember, he had never seen Ling Han, and only had the impression instilled in him by Helian Xuanxue. He had also complained, felt puzzled, and felt wronged. But as he began to cultivate, He buried all these in the bottom of his heart. At this moment, this kinship suddenly erupted. Ling Han patted Ling Jianshue's back, and then operated the origin of wood, beginning to expel the poison and treat his son's injuries. This was naturally a piece of cake. Ling Jianshue had only been wounded by a dividing soul tier cultivator, and this kind of injury was nothing in front of the present Ling Han. Moreover, with the help of the source power of heaven and earth, the poison was quickly expelled, and his injuries recovered. But Ling Jianshue was, after all, seriously injured, which was impossible to recover in a short time. "Let's go to my house first," Wenren interjected at the right time. This naturally won everyone's agreement, and the group returned to the Wenren family. As for Wenren Tang, no one cared, not even a second glance. Such a minor character would not be taken seriously by Ling Han, the Empress, and the others, and Wenren Yu was disdainful. He had made the right move, bet on the right treasure, and the tide of victory was instantly reversed. After arriving at the Wenren family, Wenren Yu arranged accommodations for everyone. The disciples of the Dragon Universe Palace were all captured by Ling Han, and under the cover of his divine sense, no one could escape. Those who deserved to be killed would be killed, and those who deserved to be crippled would be crippled. Ling Han was not a bloodthirsty person, and he knew when to stop. With their support, Wenren Chuang naturally took over the position of clan leader without any suspense. In fact, Ling Han even took out a few alchemical pills to directly raise Wenren Chuang's cultivation level to the Genesis tier. However, there was that Wenren Chuang. Wenren Chuang had no, and would have no wood. And would. For Wenren Chuang, this was good enough. His talent in martial art was not high, and it was almost impossible for him to even reach the Genesis tier. Wenren Yu was very skillful. He immediately arranged the ceremony for his younger brother to inherit the position of patriarch, and invited Ling Han and the others to attend. He was sure that the nearby forces, large and small, would not dare to do anything to the Wenren family. Ling Han changed his appearance because he was wary of the Four Seas Palace. Otherwise, when he arrived at the Heaven Saint Palace, the people of the Four Seas Palace would probably be waiting there. Where's Wenren Yu? The ceremony was about to begin, but Wenren Yu had not appeared yet, which made Ling Jianshue feel strange. Wenren Chuang smiled mysteriously and said, "I see, Brother Shue. You'll know in a while." "So mysterious, what the hell?" Ling Jianshue mumbled. He had been recuperating in the Black Tower for the past few days, and a few days was over 1,000 years. He had naturally recovered to his peak condition, and had even improved considerably. He had advanced to the severing mundane tier by striking the heaven and earth, but had also stopped at the fourth severance. Now, with the nurturing of a large amount of Ling Han's resources, he had hopes of advancing to the fifth severance. At this moment, a beautiful woman walked over and stopped behind Ling Jianshue. Ling Jianshue did not mind at first, but this woman actually stopped and did not leave, which made him feel strange. He could not help but turn around and said, "Miss, why are you always standing behind me?" The woman clasped her hands behind her back, smiled and said, "Brother Shue, is this the attitude you have towards someone who has gone through thick and thin with you?" This voice was so unfamiliar. Ling Jianshue stared blankly at the other, and after a while he suddenly said, You are Wenren Yu." "Wenren Yu, not Wenren Yu." The woman smiled sweetly. "At that time, my younger brother was young and inexperienced, so the elders of the clan had me pretend to be a man to hold up the hope of the main branch. For a long time, I have almost forgotten that I am a woman." Ling Jianshue couldn't help but feel deep veneration. This woman had made a great sacrifice for her younger brother, for the clan, and was worthy of respect. "Miss Wenren, I admire you," he said sincerely. Wenren Yu smiled and said, "Just call me by my name, and I can also call you by your name, right?" "Yes." Ling Jianshue did not take it seriously. Not far away, Ling Han, Helian Sun Shui, and the others saw and heard it clearly. "This girl is interested in Jianshue." Helian Sun Shui was somewhat proud. Her son was popular with a woman, and she as a mother was naturally happy. However, doesn't Jianshue like Shuang Shuang? Now that someone is inserted, will something happen? Zhu Xianair said. They had all heard Ling Han speak of Ling Jianshui's infatuation with Chen Shuang. Ling Han thought about it, smiled and said, "No harm, let the two of them be a bit more intimate, and also stimulate that girl. Always muddle-headed, isn't this delaying the fourth generation of our old Ling family?" Like the Empress and Li Xichan, the other women did not believe that Chen Shuang, this blockhead, would have any awareness. Previously, didn't the granddaughter of the Jiuhua celestial king also pursue Ling Jianshui? Why didn't they see this girl be jealous? Perhaps the intensity of the stimulation wasn't enough? Ling Han thought inwardly. He didn't want to uncover this layer of window paper, but wanted Chen Shuang to discover it herself. Wenren Chuang sat on the position of patriarch, and there were many guests who came to congratulate him. Everyone heard about the destruction of the Dragon Universe Palace, and thought that it was done by the elites of Heaven Saint Palace, so they naturally didn't dare to have the slightest contempt for the Wenren family. This made everyone in the Wenren family very proud. The new patriarch had just taken the position, and there were so many great families who came to congratulate them. Their future development would naturally be smooth, and from then on, they would prosper. With the trifling matter settled, Ling Han waved his hand, and everyone headed towards the Heaven Saint Palace. Of course, Wenren Yu was also with them. She had obtained Ling Jianshui's promise that she would also enter the Heaven Saint Palace this time, and become an outer court disciple. "Father, this is the cold moonlight sun sword." Ling Jianshui took out a sword and handed it over to Ling Han. Ling Han received it, his right hand holding the hilt while his left hand lightly stroked the edge of the sword. He was curious in his heart. What was so good about this sword that Sui Yuanliang would not hesitate to offend Heaven Saint Palace to snatch it away? Wang, as his palm stroked it, the edge of the sword emitted a light tremble, as if it was whispering. "This sword is very extraordinary, but as for its specific origins, only Sui Yuanliang should know," Ling Han said. He took out the spatial god tool that he had obtained from Sui Yuanliang. "Go through his things, maybe I can find some information." Chapter 2181. Ling Han entered the Black Tower. Under the acceleration of time 100,000 times, only half a day had passed in the outside world, and Ling Han had already read through all the information Sui Yuanliang had left behind. Sui Yuanliang naturally wouldn't worry that he would encounter any mishaps. He had indeed left behind many clues in his spatial god tool. Great Defiance Celestial King's Great Yin-Yang Reversal Sword. Great Defiance Celestial Art. Ling Han murmured. When he opened his eyes, he had completely grasped what Sui Yuanliang knew. So this sword is the secondary sword of the Great Yin-Yang Reversal Sword, a 7-star pseudo-celestial tool. Ling Han explained to the women and his son. However, a 7-star pseudo-celestial tool isn't the most powerful aspect of this sword. Rather, you can use this sword to find the Great Yin-Yang Reversal Sword. And the Great Yin-Yang Reversal Sword is a celestial tool, and the cultivation technique of the Great Defiance Celestial King is also sealed in the sword, the Great Defiance Celestial Art. The Empress asked, "What kind of existence is the Great Defiance Celestial King?" They were both celestial kings, but how could a celestial king of the first heaven compare to a celestial king of the ninth heaven? The standards of these people were much higher now. Celestial kings of the fifth heaven and below, and even those of the sixth and seventh heaven, were not considered very important to them. Only celestial kings of the eighth and ninth heaven could be considered impressive. Ling Han paused and then said, "I'll start from the beginning. The Great Defiance Celestial King is actually a person with a lot of stories. To become a celestial king, one must have supreme aptitude. Even king tiers can't reach the level of celestial king. However, there are always exceptions in the world. The Great Defiance Celestial King's aptitude was mediocre when he was young, and no one thought that he could advance to the Severing Mundane tier. Then he broke through after many difficulties. No one thought that he could advance to the fifth Severance, but he obtained a rare treasure that helped him accomplish this. In any case, he just barely managed to cultivate each cultivation level, but he always had a fortuitous encounter, and cultivated his cultivation level to perfection. Those of his generation either far surpassed him in cultivation level, or died because they couldn't withstand the immortal's tribulation. Only he could break through just before the immortal's tribulation threatened his life. What's interesting is that after such a bumpy journey, he actually managed to become an immortal king. Moreover, he even cultivated all the way to the ninth heaven. In the beginning, Great Defiance Immortal King was not considered outstanding among the ninth firmament immortal kings. However, he created his own Great Defiance cultivation technique and overtook the rest to become the main character of his era. However, Ling Han's expression suddenly became strange. But what? Everyone asked. However, the Great Ni Immortal King became a woman in the end, Ling Han said. What do you mean? Everyone was confused. Great Ni Immortal King was originally a man, but he always thought that he should be a woman. Although immortals can change their bodies, they can't really go against yin and yang. However, the great defying immortal art he created was able to reverse yin and yang, allowing him to become a woman, a real woman. Ling Han said slowly. Everyone was astonished. Was this even possible? The great inverse yin-yang sword also has such an effect. If you are stabbed by this immortal sword, a man will become a woman, and a woman will become a man. However, he didn't truly cultivate the Great Defiance cultivation technique, so the time of transformation is limited, Ling Han said. Fun. Hunyo clapped her hands. Neo wants this sword. Speaking of which, this Great Defiance Immortal King was really an extremely interesting person. Hee. Ling Han threw the cold moonlight sun sword to his son. Since you obtained this sword, then it's up to you to decide whether to take the Great Defiance Immortal King's cultivation technique and immortal sword. Ling Jianshui took the sword, put it into the spatial god tool, and nodded. We'll talk about it when we have the chance. The group headed to the Heaven Saint Palace through the teleportation formation. When they arrived at Red Cherry Town, Ling Han drew all the women into the Black Tower. This time, he was going to become the disciple of a master and learn that technique that could conceal the sky and conceal the sun. His goal was very clear, and it was better for the women to cultivate in the Black Tower. Thus, when they arrived at the foot of Heaven Saint Palace, there were actually only 4 people left. Ling Han, Ling Jianshui, Chen Shuangshuang, and Wen Rinyu. Starting from the foot of the mountain, the area above was directly under the jurisdiction of Heaven Saint Palace, and outsiders were definitely not allowed to enter. There was a massive formation enveloping the area, and if one entered from the outside, they could only see the boundless green mountains, but it was shrouded in clouds, and nothing could be seen clearly. If one had the token of Heaven Saint Palace, they could ignore the formation and directly fly in. But if one wanted to barge in without the token, they would immediately be crushed by the might of the formation. Unless one's strength reached the level of Celestial King, they could avoid this difficulty. Thus, if outsiders wanted to enter Heaven Saint Palace, they had to pass through the gate at the foot of the mountain. There were guards here, and they could only enter after passing through. At first, Chen Shuangshuang and Ling Jianshui could directly enter, but because there were 2 outsiders, Ling Han and Wen Rinyu, they didn't directly enter, but came to the gate together. Greetings, senior sister Chen, senior brother Ling. When it was Chen Shuangshuang and Ling Jianshui's turn, the 4 disciples guarding the gate immediately knelt down, paying their respects to the 2 of them. These 4 were also in the Severing Mundane tier, but they were all at the first severance, and their age was much older than Chen and Ling. They had advanced into the Severing Mundane tier earlier, but their talent was not high, and they had not been able to advance further. Thus, they had always been outer sect disciples, and when they saw Chen and Ling, the 2 core disciples, they naturally had to pay their respects. What the sect valued was not age, but strength and talent. Ling Jianshui nodded, then pointed at Ling Han and Wen Rinyu and said, "These 2 are good seedlings that senior sister and I discovered when we were training outside, and specially brought them back to the sect. You guys register them?" "Yes." The 4 outer sect disciples all nodded. The sect indeed had such a practice. Every disciple would pay attention to whether there were any good martial art geniuses when they went out, and they would bring them back to undergo a test. If they passed, they would be accepted into the sect, and if they failed, they would naturally be sent home. In reality, The majority of disciples came this way, and some were even personally brought back by elders, protectors, and others. For example, if a martial art conference was held at a certain place, then the good seedlings that stood out would become the target of the various great forces. Without mobilizing elders, protectors, and other celestial kings and ascending origin tier elites, how could they win? After registering Ling Han and Wenren Yu's information, the 4 disciples happily let them pass. In any case, the following matters were not for them to worry about, and they had already done their job. Ling Han and the others entered through the mountain gates and saw a mountain path winding like a great snake. On both sides were flourishing flowers and strange grasses, exuding a divine brilliance. In the distance, pavilions and pavilions were faintly discernible in midair, as if they were floating in the sky. What a fairyland on earth! Junior sister Chun. They had just entered when they saw a young man arrive on a sword. He was dressed in a long green robe and had delicate features. Senior brother Wang. Chun Shuang bowed. Meanwhile, Ling Jianshui was slightly displeased and curled his lips, also calling him senior brother Wang. Ling Han understood that this senior brother Wang was definitely his son's rival in love, although he had no enmity with this senior brother Wang, who asked this guy to fight with his son over his future wife. He definitely had to help his son. Senior brother Wang then glanced sideways at Ling Jianshui and said, "So junior brother Ling is also here. I still didn't know that you were already released by Grand Elder Jiuhua. He. The intention to sow discord couldn't be more obvious." Chapter 2182. This senior brother Wang was called Wang Liangchun. He had entered into the Heaven Saint Palace earlier than Ling Jianshui and Chen Shuang, and had also advanced into the 4th Severance earlier than them. Presently, he was attempting to break through to the dividing soul tier. After he had passed this hurdle, though he would still be a core disciple, his actual status would rise greatly. Chen Shuang was a famous beauty in the Heaven Saint Palace. Even if she was insensitive and had a bad habit of liking beautiful women, she was as beautiful as a goddess. Coupled with her outstanding talent in martial art, she still attracted the pursuit of countless male disciples. Wang Liangchun was one of them. There's no need for senior brother Wang to worry, Ling Jianshui said indifferently. Since he knew that Wang Liangchun was his rival in love, he naturally carried hostility. Wang Liangchun smiled. "Oh yes, 3rd Miss Tu is looking for junior brother Ling again." Ling Jianshui instantly frowned. This 3rd young Miss Tu was called Tu Hongying, and she was the granddaughter of the 9 Radiance Celestial King. He didn't know why she'd fallen in love with him at first sight, but she'd even declared that she wouldn't marry anyone but him. This matter alarmed the 9 Radiance Celestial King, and the 9 Radiance Celestial King even imprisoned Ling Jianshui to force him to submit. In the end, after 10,000 years, Ling Jianshui was still unwavering, and the 9 Radiance Celestial King had no choice but to release him. After all, he was a disciple of the sect, and he hadn't done anything wrong. Because of this, the 9 Radiance Celestial King treated Ling Jianshui extremely well. He felt that this young man was loyal to his heart and unyielding to external forces, and he was a promising talent. He encouraged Tu Hongying to continue pursuing Ling Jianshui. "That's right, what's so bad about slaughtering 3rd young miss? Junior brother, why can't you accept her kindness?" Chen Shuang seemed to be exasperated at his failure to live up to her expectations. This time, Ling Jianshui really wanted to vomit blood. Facing such a block of wood, his heart was bitter, but he didn't say it. If he didn't say it, Ling Han wouldn't just sit back and watch. He patted Wang Liangchun's shoulder and said, "Senior brother Wang, right? Come show me around." With that, he dragged Wang Liangchun away. Wang Liangchun couldn't help but be stunned. He was at the peak stage of the 4th Severance, and had even touched a corner of Yang Soul. As long as Yang Soul Sea was open, he would have absolute confidence in breaking through. However, such strength was useless in front of Ling Han. Ling Han easily patted him on the shoulder and dragged him away, leaving him unable to resist at all. He stared at Ling Han, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't see through Ling Han's cultivation. He only felt that Ling Han was like a tall mountain, a vast ocean unfathomable. Ling Han pulled Wang Liangchun away, saying that he wanted the other party to show him around. But in fact, he was dragging the other party everywhere. After a long time, he went back to find Ling Jianxue. In his heart, he knew that this kind of help was not enough. In the future, he still had to rely on Ling Jianxue himself. Come on, I have to start my son's special training in advance. Ling Jianxue immediately brought Ling Han and Wenren Yu to the Great Hall of the sect. Here, the outsider's martial art talent and comprehension ability would be tested. Only those who passed could stay, otherwise, they could only get lost. Wenren Yu, an elder in charge of the test, called out loudly. He was shockingly an Immortal Palace tier elite. As expected of a Celestial King tier sect of 8th heaven, an Immortal Palace tier great elite was actually willing to lower himself to do this kind of work. In the outside world, an Immortal Palace tier could establish their own sect and rule over a region to become a king. Wenren Yu was just about to follow his instructions, but 3 men just happened to walk into the Great Hall. One walked in front, dressed in embroidered robes, exuding a luxurious aura. 2 men followed behind him, and they were similarly dignified, their auras astonishing. What was surprising was that the person walking in front was only at the 4th severance, but the 2 men behind him were both Earth Soul tier. This weak person was actually the leader. This person definitely had a powerful background. Otherwise, how could he possibly have 2 Earth Soul tier elites follow him so closely? So it's young Master Da. That Immortal Palace tier elder actually stood up and bowed slightly to the 4th severance young man. His background was really powerful, and at least Immortal Palace tier elites did not dare to slight him. Young Master Da's expression was filled with disdain, and his eyes swept over Ling Jianxue, saying, Lord Duan, could it be that you don't know that the sect's test rules have already changed? What changed? The Immortal Palace tier elder was slightly confused. He had been in charge of the test all this time, so if there were changes, how could he not know? You should go there, young Master Da said, pointing at a pillar on the side. The Immortal Palace tier opened his mouth slightly, and instantly understood that young Master Da was deliberately making things difficult for him. Sure enough, the rumors were true. Young Master Da was currently pursuing the 3rd young Miss 2, but the 3rd young Miss 2 was completely infatuated with Ling Jianxue, and this was something that everyone in the Heaven Saint Palace knew about. This naturally caused young Master Da to burn with jealousy, and he wanted to target Ling Jianxue. However, although young Master Da was also the descendant of a celestial king, they were from the same sect after all. Moreover, Ling Jianxue was highly regarded by the 9 Splendor Celestial King, so young Master Da did not dare to go too far. However, making things difficult for the people that Ling Jianxue had brought in was an insignificant matter. At first, he had tested Ling Han and Wenren Yu with the standards of outer sect disciples, but young Master Da had pointed to the testing area for true disciples. This requirement was like heaven and earth. In the Heaven Saint Palace, disciples were divided into 4 levels. From low to high, they were outer court disciple, inner court disciple, true disciple, and core disciple. Now that he had suddenly jumped from outer court disciple to true disciple, the passing rate was naturally close to 0. True disciples were all king tiers. Young Master Da, the Immortal Palace tier elder, felt slightly awkward. If he helped young Master Da, and this matter was reported to the higher-ups, he would also have to bear the consequences. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. Young Master Da appeared to be incredibly arrogant, and he casually tossed a vial of alchemical pills to the Immortal Palace tier elder. This is a Time River pill. You've been trapped in the first secret of the Immortal Palace tier for many years, and this can help you break through to the second secret. The Immortal Palace tier elder's eyes instantly lit up, and he hurriedly caught the vial of alchemical pills, saying, Since young Master Da has said so, I naturally have nothing to worry about. This was really a naked transaction. A cold smile involuntarily appeared on Ling Han's face. At first, he had only wanted to sneak into the Heaven Saint Palace, and then use the Black Tower to enter their treasure vault. He would then obtain that heaven-concealing celestial technique. However, this young Master Da was actually bullying him in such a blatant manner, and this naturally angered him. Yi Jianda, you've gone too far. Ling Jianxue couldn't help but chide him. How dare you? The two Earth Soul tier elites behind young Master Da shouted in unison. You actually dare to directly address young Master Da by his name. Hurry up and kneel down to apologize. Meanwhile, young Master Da and Yi Jianda waved their hands and said, There's no need to lower yourself to his level. Who asked me to have an ancestor who's a fifth heaven celestial king? Well, he doesn't. Ling Jianshui, I'm clearly bullying you. What can you do? Are you going to bite me? Ling Jianshui was trembling in anger, but since Yi Jianda had put his shamelessness on the table, he didn't know what to say. Ling Han sighed in his mind. Although this son of his was quite talented in martial art, his eloquence was really too weak. In the future, he definitely had to properly train him and the large black dog. Even if he couldn't kill people with his mouth, he would at least be able to train his mouth into a cannon. Regardless of what the test is, can we start now? He interrupted as he patted his son's shoulder. The Immortal Palace tier elder walked over to Yi Jianda, and the latter nodded. Sure. Only then did he nod. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, I'll go first. Chapter 2184. When the crowd heard this, they were even more shocked. Even the heavenly sage Immortal King could only make the heavens cry stone ring 83 times. What kind of concept was Ling Han's 99 times? Didn't that mean that this guy had a chance to become a ninth heaven supreme Immortal King? Now, to say nothing of the ascending origin tier and Immortal Palace tier, even those celestial kings were looking at Ling Han with envy. A ninth heaven Immortal King. I am the only one in the world. Emojua pondered for a moment. If it rang out 90 times, it meant that Ling Han was qualified to become a ninth firmament Immortal King. If it rang out 99 times, it meant that if Ling Han could become a ninth firmament Immortal King, then he would be one of the best existences in this realm. The key was that the heavenly Tao had its limits. The 9 heavens was the limit, so 99 strikes on the heaven resonance stone was also the limit. But what if Ling Han's achievements were more than that? Skysage Immortal Monarch had once followed the Kuan-Peng origin beast, and had a deep relationship with the Kuan-Peng Palace. He also knew some secrets that other 8th firmament Immortal Monarchs did not know. He knew that there was a truly supreme level above the 9th heaven Celestial King. Celestial Venerable and Empyrean could jump out of the world, but the Heaven Resonator Stone couldn't. Because of that, it could only ring 99 times. Even if an Empyrean came, he could only cause the stone to ring 99 times, because of the limitations imposed by the world. Young man, what's your name? Emojua asked politely. Of course he was asking Ling Han. Ling Han first bowed in greeting to Emojua, then said, Junior is Han Lin. He had changed his appearance, and had also changed his name in passing. Emojua sighed. I wanted to take you as my disciple, but I won't be here for long, so I can't teach you anything. However, since such a genius has entered my Heaven Saint Palace, it must be the will of the heavens. With my order, Han Lin can enter the Cloud Treasure Hall at will. The impact of his words was too great. What did he mean by, I don't have much time left here? He was a dignified 8th level Immortal King. Could it be that someone could force him to leave the Heaven Saint Palace? Furthermore, he actually allowed Ling Han to enter the Cloud Treasure Hall, to comprehend at will. One had to know that all of the Heaven Saint Palace's celestial arts were hidden there. And even the majority of celestial kings were limited to only a portion of the celestial arts. Yes, it was possible for Ling Han to become a 9th firmament Immortal King in the future. But it was only a possibility. However, the path to becoming a celestial king was a long and arduous one. Who knew how many people would perish on the path of growth? If they allowed Ling Han to obtain all the secrets of Heaven Saint Palace without any restrictions, then what if Ling Han was captured? Wouldn't they be exposing all the celestial arts of Heaven Saint Palace? Of course, one of the reasons why a power could prosper for so long was that it had an expert overseeing it. Another important reason was that it had a unique immortal technique. Master. Even the Heaven Saint Palace's palace master couldn't help but call out in shock. Emojua waved his hand. A great tribulation is about to descend upon the heavens and earth. At that time, whether or not the Heaven Saint Palace can continue to exist is a problem. By forming a good relationship, the Heaven Saint Palace might even have a chance to survive. Upon hearing this, everyone was shocked. Even a seventh firmament immortal king was speechless. From Emojua's tone, he seemed to be very pessimistic about the future. However, Ling Han was enlightened. When Emojua said that he wanted to leave the Heaven Saint Palace, he was probably going to resist the tide of darkness. This was also the reason why there weren't many immortal kings in the immortal domain. In the end, they would all head to the connection point between the two realms to resist the tide of darkness. Emojua had clearly seen how powerful the dark forces were, which was why he was so pessimistic. Perhaps, when the tide of darkness erupted, the immortal domain would be doomed eternally. In this kind of calamity, only heavenly venerables would be able to survive. Then, if Ling Han became a heavenly venerables and lent a helping hand to the Heaven Saint Palace, then there would be a possibility that the Heaven Saint Palace could continue to exist. However, becoming a heavenly venerable was extremely difficult, almost impossible. That was why Emojua said that there was a chance of survival. Ling Han bowed towards Emojua again. This immortal king had great wisdom. Just his open-mindedness alone was worthy of Ling Han's admiration. Emojua smiled. He knew that Ling Han understood what he meant. With a tap of his foot, 8-colored immortal light flashed, and he disappeared. The Heaven Saint Palace Master pondered for a moment, then said, "Confer Han Lin the title of Elder Heaven's Will. His position is below this palace, and he can control all the elders." Hearing his words, the crowd was in an uproar again. A mere dividing soul could actually be ranked above a group of immortal king elders? How could anyone believe that? However, Ling Han admired this Heaven Saint Palace Master very much. Since Emojua had already given him such great authority, the other party might as well go with the flow and give him another boost. But in reality, to control all the elders, they had to be willing to listen to him. How could a mere dividing soul be controlled? Therefore, this was just an empty title, an empty position. It sounded good. The immortal kings were naturally all intelligent people. They understood with a single thought, and did not object. After all, it was Emojua who had given Ling Han such great authority first. Who would dare to not give face to this 8th heaven immortal king? Since things had already come to this, there was naturally no reason for the crowd to stay. However, Duan Haiming had nowhere to go. He could only look at Ling Han with a pitiful gaze. In terms of strength, Ling Han could defeat him in one move. In terms of status, Ling Han was Elder Heaven's Will, the head of all the elders. Duan Haiming was nothing. However, Ling Han only patted his shoulder and said, "This seat will not always stay in the Heaven Saint Palace. I will have to trouble you to take care of Ling Jianxue." "Understood, I understand." Duan Haiming immediately nodded, beaming with joy. Ling Han's words clearly meant that he did not intend to pursue the matter with him. This naturally made him inexplicably happy. Moreover, to be able to form a connection with Elder Heaven's will. So what if he became a servant? Elder Heaven could become a 9th heaven immortal king in the future. Even the Sky Saint Immortal King wanted to form a good relationship with him. Of course, he understood that Ling Han had let him go because he wanted him to take care of Ling Jianxue. He would naturally spare no effort. Ling Han then looked at Yi Jianda, his gaze somewhat sinister. Yi Jianda humphed. Although the Palace Master and the Sky Saint Immortal King were both very powerful, Ling Han, he was only a dividing soul after all. He was who knew how far away from becoming a celestial king. So how could he dare to make a move against him? Of course, he did not dare to confront Ling Han head-on. After all, Elder Heaven's Will's identity was somewhat frightening. Let's go. He left with his 2 subordinates. He would find a chance to deal with Ling Jianxue in the future. Ling Han did not stop him. He would help his son. But he definitely would not settle everything for his son, no matter how big or small. Without tempering, how could one possess unyielding tenacity? The most important thing now was to improve his son's strength. He could not personally act and defeat people like Wang Liangchun, right? With him, Elder Heaven's Will, overseeing things, Wenren Yu naturally passed the test easily. However, there was no need for Ling Han to open the back door. This girl's talent in martial art was actually not bad, and qualified to become a true disciple. This was somewhat unexpected to Ling Han. After completing the test, Ling Han directly dragged Ling Jianshui into the Black Tower, intending to give him special training. No matter what, his son had to become a fifth severance monarch tier. After Hellion Sun Shui knew the danger of breaking through to the fifth severance, she wanted to make Ling Han and his son change their minds. Once they failed to break through, they would transform into Dao and perish. She would rather her son be a little mediocre, and wanted him to live well. But Ling Jianshui's will was firm. With his father Ling Han, who was like a god of war, standing in front of him, even if he could not match him, he had to keep up and not fall too far behind. He began to break through to the fifth severance. Chapter 2185. Ling Jianshui cultivated diligently in the Black Tower. All kinds of precious cultivation resources were thrown at him, without regard for cost. Whatever high-level alchemical pills, whatever natural treasures like dragon crystals, as long as he could use them, he would use them without hesitation. One day in the outside world was a whole 100,000 days in the Black Tower. Thus, only 100 days had passed in the outside world, and Ling Jianshui had already reached the end of the fourth severance, touching a corner of the fifth severance. It couldn't be helped. Ling Han, Hunyou, and the Empress were all fifth severance cultivators, so he could be imperceptibly influenced by them. Added with the fact that his own natural talent was extraordinary, and he had endless resources madly thrown at him, it would be strange if he still couldn't touch a corner of the fifth severance. He began to empty his mind. In a few days he would attempt this crucial step. Meanwhile, Ling Han spent his days in the Cloud Treasure Palace, comprehending the various celestial techniques collected by the Heaven Saint Palace. At first, he only wanted that deceiving cultivation technique, but since Emojua said that the Cloud Treasure Palace was completely open to him, he naturally would not hold back, and read through all kinds of celestial techniques. I want to perfect the Fury Fist, and create a technique that belongs to me. He had great ambitions. Only a Dao that belonged to him was the strongest Dao. That deceiving heaven and earth technique was called the Heaven Deceiving Technique, and was very profound. Ling Han guessed that this was not created by the Heaven Saint Celestial King, but he had obtained it somewhere. Perhaps it was created by a ninth Heaven Celestial King, or even a heavenly venerable technique. Cultivating the Heaven Deceiving Technique to small accomplishment would allow one to conceal their own aura and be like a mortal, and cultivating it to great accomplishment would allow others to sense their own cultivation level, and they would be able to display the same aura as their own. It could only be equal to their own cultivation level or lower. It was impossible to exude the aura of a celestial king when one was clearly only in the immortal palace tier. And if one reached consummate level, then they could really deceive heaven and earth, exude whatever aura they wanted, and they could even impersonate a ninth heaven celestial king, guaranteeing that no one would be able to find out if they did not make a move. Ling Han cultivated the Heaven Deceiving Technique as he read through the various celestial techniques in the Cloud Treasure Palace, referencing, and finally discarding everything to form his own unique Dao. Another few days later, Ling Jianshui exited the Black Tower. He already had considerable confidence in breaking through to the fifth severance. Are you sure? Ling Han asked solemnly. This was his son, so of course he had to be extremely careful and not let anything happen to him. Ling Jianshui proudly smiled and said, Father, don't worry. Seeing snow, Hellion Xuanxue was still worried. She had heard from the Empress, and who knew that the fifth severance was very, very difficult to break through. Otherwise, there would not be so few celestial kings in this world. Mother, I know. Ling Jianshui was very sure. All right, go ahead. Ling Han still used the Black Tower to bring Ling Jianshui away from the Heaven Saint Palace. They arrived at an uninhabited area, and Ling Jianshui continued to attempt to break through to the fifth severance inside the Black Tower. 2 days later, Father, let me out, Ling Jianshui said loudly, his whole body emitting a violent aura. Ling Han nodded, and with a thought, released Ling Jianshui from the Black Tower. Quang, there was a sudden clap of thunder. Boundless black clouds rolled over, and the heavenly tribulation was rapidly taking shape. Ling Jianshui naturally had the natural peach seal, but this was given to him by Hunyou. Though the rock palace had been flattened, there was still a great number of treasures that Hunyeo had brought with her. This was the escape route that Long Yueshi had prepared because she believed in Ling Han. Ling Jianxue soared into the skies and took the initiative to face the heavenly tribulation. Quang quang quang. Terrifying lightning continuously struck down. The fifth severance was too important, and he was destined to become a celestial king. Thus, the trial that the heaven and earth had sent down was even more strict, even to the extent of being harsh. Without the natural peach seal, no one could even think of passing. Half a day later, Ling Jianxue landed. Though his whole body was dripping with blood, and innumerable bones were broken, he had finally passed the heavenly tribulation. Ling Han broke into a smile. After advancing into the fifth severance, his son's future was bright. He threw Ling Jianxue into the Black Tower to heal his wounds, and then moved, returning to the Heaven Saint Palace. The flow of time in the Black Tower accelerated too quickly. When Ling Han returned to the Heaven Saint Palace, Ling Jianxue, who was inside the Black Tower, had already completely recovered to his peak condition. Ling Han spent some time and chose the most suitable technique among the celestial techniques that he had grasped and taught them to his son. There was no sun or moon in the Black Tower, and time flew. Tens of thousands of years passed in the blink of an eye, but only a month had passed in the outside world. Ling Jianshue's battle prowess had truly reached monarch tier, and could be ranked in the top ranks among monarch tiers. Unfortunately, he was completely incomparable to Ling Han, and was slightly inferior to Hunyeo and the Empress at the same time. After all, Hunyeo was the direct heir of a ninth heaven celestial king tier level sect, and she also had the martial art mark of a ninth heaven celestial king, while the Empress had basked in Ling Han's glory, and had obtained an unimaginable amount of natural treasures. To say nothing else, the two women had each refined a source power of heaven and earth inside their bodies. Even so, Ling Jianxue was still incredibly satisfied. There were too few natural peach seals, and if he only relied on the Heaven Saint Palace, then he would never have a chance in this lifetime. Now that he could advance into the fifth severance, it was already a surprise to him. The present Ling Jianxue was qualified to become the holy son of the Heaven Saint Palace. Ling Jianxue came out of seclusion, but he did not immediately report the situation of his breakthrough to the Heaven Saint Palace. Instead, he continued to consolidate his strength. There would be a great competition for core disciples in the sect soon, and he wanted to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. At first, Wenren was still very reserved, but recently, she practically did not hide her love for Ling Jianxue at all, which gave Ling Jianxue a great headache. If he refused, it would hurt her heart. After all, they were friends in need. But if he did not refuse, he would feel that it would be troublesome, and he was more afraid that Chen Shuangshuang would misunderstand. Though he had once tactfully expressed that he already had someone he liked, Wenren did not mind at all, saying that it was very normal for a prodigy like Ling Jianxue to have several lovers. Furthermore, Ling Han was still adding fuel to the fire, continuously creating opportunities for the two of them to be together, creating a situation where the two of them were practically stuck together every day. Tung tung tung. Chen Shuangshuang suddenly ran over. "Uncle, those two are really too outrageous." She placed her hands on her hips, her expression filled with displeasure. "Instead of cultivating properly, what is the meaning of sticking together every day?" Ling Han chuckled. "Who are you talking about?" "Of course it's your son," Chen Shuangshuang said angrily. "What's wrong with that woman? Doesn't she have her own place to live? She doesn't even go back at night. She's really shameless. Why is she bothering you?" Ling Han laughed. "TCH, I'm just concerned about junior brother Ling," Chen Shuangshuang snorted. Ling Han took a sip of tea and said, "It's also time for Jianxue to get married. Since the two of them have a good relationship, let them be husband and wife." "That won't do." Chen Shuangshuang immediately jumped up. "Didn't you see junior brother Ling's face was full of reluctance when he was with that woman? Uncle, you can't randomly matchmake them. Then what should we do?" Ling Han spread out his hands. Chen Shuangshuang lacked quick-wittedness, and could not help but scratch her ears and cheeks, falling into anxiety. Ling Han smiled and said, "I have an idea." "What idea?" Chen Shuangshuang's eyes lit up. "You and Jianxue get married. Seeing that Chen Shuangshuang was about to jump up in anger, Ling Han hurriedly waved his hand, indicating the other party to calm down. It's fake. It's just to drive away those flowers and plants, so that your junior brother Ling can cultivate in peace. Mobile. Chapter 2186. But Chen Shuangshuang appeared a little hesitant. Are you not willing to help your junior brother Ling? Ling Han said slowly. Sigh, you say you're loyal, but it's just lip service. Chen Shuangshuang immediately became anxious and said, Who says I'm just lip service? Fine, let's get married. Ling Han nodded. All right, I'll arrange this matter. You can be your bride obediently. Fake. Chen Shuangshuang hurriedly emphasized. Ling Han readily accepted his advice. I'm pretending. Chen Shuangshuang left, and the Empress and the others walked out from the inner chambers. When they were bored in the Black Tower, they would come out for a walk, but they wouldn't be noticed by others. Husband, you're really wicked, Shui Yinyu pointed out. She had once been a teacher, and had a strong sense of justice. Ling Han sighed and said, It can't be helped. Who asked this girl to be a block of wood? And that stupid son of mine doesn't know how to express himself. Who's the stupid son? Helian Xuanxue said in displeasure. In the eyes of a mother, the son was naturally the best. Ling Han laughed. However, if it weren't for the fact that this girl is also interested in Jian Shui, why would she come over to complain out of jealousy and agree to a fake marriage to save Jian Shui? That's true. All the girls nodded. Chen Shuangshuang was just too careless and didn't realize her feelings for Ling Jianshui. But she agreed to a fake marriage with Ling Jianshui almost without hesitation. This was already enough to prove her love for Ling Jianshui. If it were someone else who would agree, Ling Han snickered. When the wedding was held, the fake would also become real. Take this opportunity to make a big fuss. He released the news, and immediately, everyone in the entire Heaven Saint Palace knew that Ling Jianshui was going to marry Chen Shuangshuang. What? The person in question, Ling Jianshui, instead learned this news from someone else. He hurriedly ran over to find Ling Han. Father, what's going on? Could it be that you don't want to marry your senior sister Chen? Asked Ling Han with a smile. Ling Jianshui was immediately shy. Of course, he wanted to marry her, but this was too sudden. Chen Shuangshuang didn't even know his feelings. How could she marry him? Moreover, he was also the person involved, okay? Why did he only know the news now? I guess so, but, Ling Han laughed and said, There's no need for buts. Just wait to be your groom. Ling Jianshui, come out. At this moment a clamor came from outside. Ling Jianshui ran out, and saw Wang Liangchun standing at the door with an aggressive look. Senior brother Wang, what can I do for you? He asked. Wang Liangchun snorted and said, I won't allow you to marry junior sister Chen. Ling Jianshui scoffed and said, First of all, you're not anyone to me. Secondly, you're not anyone to senior sister Chen. What qualifications do you have to stop me? Because you're not worthy, Wang Liangchun said proudly. With your strength, how could you be worthy of junior sister Chen? You deserve it. Naturally, Ling Jianshui made a gesture of invitation. Then please give me some pointers, senior brother Wang. You're asking for trouble. Wang Liangchun's expression was full of disdain. He advanced into the fourth severance millions of years earlier than Ling Jianshui. And now he had already polished the fourth severance to perfection, only one step away from breaking through to the dividing soul tier. His battle prowess was naturally above Ling Jianshui's. Since you insist on asking for humiliation, then I'll grant your wish. Wang Liangchun tapped his foot and soared into the air. Come, let's battle in the air. Ling Jianshui's fighting spirit rose. After advancing into the fifth severance, he hadn't fought with anyone yet, and only knew that he was unprecedentedly strong, but he had no idea how strong he was. He also tapped his foot and soared into the air. Senior brother Wang, please grant me a move, he said very politely. This was because he had grasped the general trend, so there was no need to be extremely vicious. Wang Liangchun smirked coldly. I'll make you bow down in 100 moves. His figure moved, and he charged towards Ling Jianshui, using a powerful celestial technique as soon as he moved. Ling Jianshui raised his fist to meet the attack. Pung! It was only a single strike, and Wang Liangchun was sent flying back a good 100 miles. Wah! Wang Liangchun suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood, his expression filled with shock. How could the other's strength be so powerful? Even Ling Jianxue hadn't expected it. He only knew that he was definitely stronger than Wang Liangchun, but never would he have thought that he could win with a single move, and it was a crushing one at that. Monarch tears were stronger than emperor tears in the first place, and the fifth severance was when the suppression was the most obvious. If both of them advanced into Yang Soul tier, though Ling Jianxue would still be stronger, he definitely couldn't wound Wang Liangchun with a single move. Did you eat some celestial pill? Wang Liangchun gasped and asked loudly. Ling Jianxue laughed. Senior brother Wang, you admit it. Victory and defeat had already been decided, so there was naturally no need to continue fighting. And he also completely understood how much stronger he was than the other. I didn't lose. Wang Liangchun was unwilling to give up, and suddenly rolled back, charging towards Ling Jianxue again. There isn't even a gap, so how could you possibly catch up to me? Ling Jianxue moved, pointing a finger at Wang Liangchun. Peng! Wang Liangchun was once again sent flying, still not a match for Ling Jianxue. Fifth severance against fourth severance. That was the suppression of a dividing soul tier against a severing mundane tier. Too much. Wang Liangchun finally knew that the gap between him and Ling Jianxue had reached an indescribable level, and could only glare hatefully at Ling Jianxue a few times before suddenly turning around and leaving. Just as he had said before, continuing to fight would be asking for humiliation. Father, so I'm so strong. Ling Jianxue flew down and said to Ling Han very excitedly. Ling Han laughed and said, You still have a long way to go. If you are satisfied with the current situation, the door to Celestial King tier may not open for you. I understand. Ling Jianxue immediately put away his excited expression. Afterwards, there were more unwilling senior and junior brothers who challenged Ling Jianxue, but they were all easily defeated. Who else in the severing mundane tier was a match for him? Even if Yang Soul tier made a move, Ling Jianxue could match them, though he could not defeat them. As the number of times he won increased, he also attracted the attention of the sect, and finally revealed the fact that he had become a monarch tier, causing a commotion in the Heaven Saint Palace. Monarch tiers were destined to become celestial kings, and even in the Heaven Saint Palace, it was rare for one to appear in tens of billions of years. Ling Jianxue was thus appointed as a holy son, and his future path of development was naturally infinitely bright. With Ling Han's advance warning, Tu Hongying naturally could not make a fuss, so Ling Jianxue and Chen Shuangshuang's wedding could be carried out smoothly. One day after the wedding, Ling Jianxue brought Chen Shuangshuang to visit his father and mother, and as a result, Ling Han was ruthlessly glared at by his daughter-in-law. Obviously, though this daughter-in-law was insensitive, she naturally understood that she had fallen into Ling Han's trap by now. But what was done could not be undone. Last night, she had not been able to resist Ling Jianshue's coaxing and pestering, and added with the fact that she had been forced to drink a lot of wine, she was a little confused, and in the end, that bastard succeeded. In the end, it was still Ling Han, her father, who was too shameless, actually tricking her. Chapter 2188. Yi Jianda dared to provoke Ling Han, because there was a tall man standing beside him. He looked no more than 30 years old, but his body was wrapped in five-colored light. This was a fifth heaven celestial king, the celestial king of the Yi clan Yi Wuhai. With a fifth heaven celestial king present, Yi Jianda naturally dared to glare at Ling Han. Moreover, if this was not the territory of the Heaven Saint Palace, he would even beg Yi Wuhai to kill Ling Han. Killing intent flashed in Ling Han's eyes. He wanted to leave this kind of trash for his son to deal with. But this trash was so arrogant. He was really seeking death. On Dragon's Gate Mountain, everyone is a fish waiting to leap over the Dragon's Gate. The heavenly Tao is very fair. Everyone's cultivation level will be suppressed to the mountain river tier. There is no celestial king, ascending origin tier, or immortal palace tier. Ling Han read out the information about Dragon's Gate Mountain in his mind. So what if he's a celestial king? If he dares to interfere, I'll kill a celestial king for fun. In a battle of the same cultivation level, apart from Ji Wuming, who else can match me? Ling Han was full of confidence. This was definitely not him overestimating himself. Ji Wuming was once a ninth heaven celestial king. He must have reincarnated to ascend to the heavenly venerable tier. So he was definitely stronger than him, at the same cultivation level. How awesome was a ninth heaven celestial king? Hence, the current Ji Wuming definitely crushed all celestial kings at the same cultivation level. Even ninth heaven celestial kings were no exception. And Ling Han could fight Ji Wuming to a draw, which meant that he could also defeat celestial kings at the same cultivation level as him. Because there were too many people who wanted to use the teleportation formation, everyone could only line up. Although Ling Han was Elder Tianyi, he didn't have much privilege. After all, his cultivation level was too low. Even ascending origin tiers didn't have to be afraid of him, let alone celestial kings. After lining up for almost a day, they finally sat on the teleportation formation. Wang light surged, and their bodies felt a huge pull. When they came back to their senses, they had already arrived at the westernmost border town of Kunpeng Heaven. If one walked west from here for less than 10,000 miles, they would be out of the Kunpeng Heaven. After that, they would cross the 9 Dragons Heaven, the Nether Sea Heaven, and the other 7 heavenly domains to enter the Yin River Heaven. This time, the Dragon Gate Mountain appeared there. They began to hurry on their way. Ling Han unleashed his void spirit space, and he instantly traveled hundreds of millions of miles. His speed was even faster than the majority of Immortal Palace tier elites. Even so, it took them half a year to enter Yin River Heaven. The Dark River Heaven lived up to its name. No matter where one went, they would be able to see a long river stretching across the sky. It was gloomy and heavy like metal, but this long river was too high to reach, and even Immortal Palace tier elites couldn't touch it. They would be struck down by the storms in the 9th heaven. Ascending origin tier cultivators could give it a try, but it was rumored that the water of the Yin River was incredibly cold, and even ascending origin tier cultivators would not be able to withstand it, and would be frozen to death. However, this was a holy land for martial artists who cultivated water-type laws. They could better comprehend the water-type Great Tao here. Let's find the exact location of Dragon Gate Mountain. They found a map and began to search. After confirming the direction, they continued to march toward Dragon Gate Mountain. Because they were not familiar with the road, they spent a little more time. After about a dozen days, they finally arrived at the foot of Dragon Gate Mountain. This place had originally been a sea, but now an indescribably huge mountain had appeared out of thin air, filling up the entire sea. The size of this mountain was evident. However, from the foot of the mountain, one could not see the peak at all. They could only see divine light and celestial mist curling around the mountain, turning into dragons, phoenixes, and other beasts. It was also as if there were celestials sitting cross-legged, chanting the Great Tao, turning into the light of regulations. Dragon Gate Mountain was indeed extraordinary. Ding 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 dang 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 dang. There were battles everywhere at the foot of the mountain. Where there were people, there would be martial arts. After entering the region of Dragon Gate Mountain, Ling Han and the others immediately discovered that not only had they lost the ability to fly, but even the height they could jump was greatly limited. It was as if they had suddenly become ordinary people. That was right. Otherwise, Dragon Gate Mountain would be too easy to climb. We can't put people into a spatial god tool. Without a record of climbing the mountain, heaven and earth would not recognize us at all. Then, even if we leaped over the Dragon Gate, it would be useless. Ling Han released the girls from the Black Tower. Now, everyone could only rely on themselves. Even if they were carried up the mountain by others, they would similarly not receive the recognition of heaven and earth. It's fine. Walking a few steps is healthy, Li Sichan joked. However, we can't fly, and we can't jump too high or too far. Then this path is not passable. Ling Han gazed into the distance. This mountain region was full of steep cliffs, and it was too difficult to jump over. Find a main path. They exited the mountain region, and immediately regained the ability to fly. They circled around the mountain, and soon found a relatively easy main path. According to the information, there were many such main paths, so there was no need to squeeze together to climb the mountain. Ling Han and the others landed, and were about to walk forward, but they saw that this area was actually sealed off. "Move aside!" Immediately, someone shouted at Ling Han and the others. "This place has already been occupied by our combat dragon palace. Trespassers kill." "This place was opened by your family?" Ling Han was surprised. There were no secret treasures on this Dragon's Gate mountain, nor any celestial medicine or cultivation technique, and anyone could leap over the Dragon's Gate. So was there a need to seal off the mountain? But when he thought again, he came to a realization. Ascending the mountain, everyone would be suppressed by the Tao of heaven and earth. Once they encountered an opponent, the advantage of cultivation level of elites could not be used at all, and they would completely have the ability to battle on the same level. In other words, even if a celestial king encountered a more freakish severing mundane tier or dividing soul tier, they could possibly be defeated or killed. Thus, to ensure safety, sealing off the road was naturally the best method. No one could ascend, so naturally there would be no battle, and there was naturally nothing to worry about. The name of Combat Dragon Palace is not bad, but why are all of them as timid as mice, not daring to fight at all? Ling Han shook his head, appearing very disdainful. "Brat, don't talk nonsense, get lost." There were a dozen or so people in the Combat Dragon Palace responsible for sealing off the road up the mountain, but their strength was very weak. True, those with some strength would not be willing to seal off the road here. They must have all ascended the mountain, wanting to leap over the Dragon's Gate and become a mortal to become a saint. However, the reputation of the Combat Dragon Palace was still quite frightening. It was a force of ascending origin tier, so it was no wonder that these people dared to be so arrogant. "You guys are the ones who should get lost." Hunyo threw a punch. Pung, a punch flew out, and the people of the Combat Dragon Palace were all sent flying, scattering in the air. Meanwhile, Ling Han shook his head. The heaven and earth had deliberately allowed the Dragon's Gate mountain to descend early, so that more elites would appear and be able to resist the forces of darkness. But these people actually wanted to seal off the mountain, going against the natural order. How could they possibly obtain the approval of the heaven and earth? Serves them right. They ascended the mountain, and immediately discovered that they had lost the ability to fly again, and the speed at which they advanced also became slower and slower. The trial of heaven and earth had already begun. The mountain was majestic, and one could not see the end of it. Everyone hurried on with their heads down. It was said that they could not enter into a spatial god tool in the entire process of ascending the mountain, or else all their previous efforts would be wasted. Thus they had to adjust their stamina. This place seemed to be shrouded in celestial mist, yet was extremely lacking in spiritual chi, and they could only rely on alchemical pills to replenish their expended origin power. Cell phones were more refreshing to read. Chapter 2189. After walking for a day, the mountain path appeared to deviate, and a little further ahead, two mountain paths merged, becoming one. If one continued to go up, the mountain paths would continue to merge, and finally become one, reaching the Dragon's Gate. After walking for another day, the mountain paths merged again, and this time, it was 4 into 1. Everyone felt the difficulty of walking. It was as if they had become mortals. But what they had to conquer was a heaven-reaching mountain. How could they possibly succeed? Thus, to ascend the Dragon's Gate mountain, what was needed was not strength, cultivation level, or talent, but only perseverance, and the courage to conquer everything. Including Ling Han, everyone's pressure was actually the same. Even if Ling Han had cultivated 9 divided souls, and possessed 9 source powers of heaven and earth, he did not have the slightest advantage here. Everyone was dripping with sweat, feeling extremely exhausted. They wanted nothing more than to stop and rest, or even turn around and descend the mountain. A true elite must have a will as firm as iron. "Everyone, you must persevere." Another day passed, and there was no longer an empty mountain path ahead of them. Instead, a group of people appeared, sitting on a rock and resting. These people also heard the commotion of Ling Han and the others ascending, and all turned their heads, their expressions immediately showing vigilance. Here, no matter how high one's cultivation level was, it was useless. Even ascending origin tiers could be slaughtered by severing mundane tiers. Sir, don't go any further. There were 9 people in that group, and among them, a purple-robed middle-aged man stood up and shouted at Ling Han. Why? Ling Han asked with a smile. If you go any further, I'll regard you as an enemy and kill you on the spot. This purple-robed man said, a strong killing intent rising on his face. This group was all from the Combat Dragon Palace, and the purple-robed man in the lead was even an ascending origin tier elite. But here only willpower mattered, not cultivation. And these people belonged to the category of those with weak willpower, so they kept stopping to rest, and were already separated from the main group. Now that everyone was almost reduced to mortals, so what if they were ascending origin tiers? Thus, they were all afraid that Ling Han and the others would use force, and naturally did not want them to approach, minding their own business. Thinking of the tide of darkness, Ling Han suppressed his anger and said, Don't worry, we have no enmity and will not pick a fight. So all of you sit quietly. We're just borrowing a path up the mountain. You want to take the opportunity to launch a sneak attack on us? Someone from the Battle Dragon Palace shouted. Ling Han couldn't help but shake his head. These people were despicable themselves, so he had to treat them the same way. He had originally considered the relationship with the Tide of Darkness, and was unwilling to weaken the strength of the Immortal region. But after thinking about it, what could these lowly people do? To put it bluntly, perhaps when the Tide of Darkness attacked, they would be the first to betray the Immortal region. There was no need to be polite, and there was nothing to be polite about. Ling Han strode forward. Since you won't listen to my kind words, I can only use force. Brat, you've revealed your true colors, haven't you? The people from the Battle Dragon Palace pointed at Ling Han one after another, looking pleased that they had seen through his little tricks. Ling Han couldn't be bothered to reply. He strode forward, clenched his fists and punched out. Bang bang bang, no one was a match for him, and they were all sent flying with a single punch. Even if everyone's cultivation level was the same, the advantage that Ling Han had cultivated to the 5th Severance and 9th Dividing Soul tier would not be erased. It would only be weakened, but it was still incredibly powerful. The heaven and earth were fair, pulling everyone's cultivation level to the same, but it was also because the heaven and earth were fair, that if you put in more effort and cultivated to the 5th Severance or 9th Dividing Soul tier, the heaven and earth would not turn a blind eye. Let's go. They continued to climb, and after another 3 days, the women finally collapsed from exhaustion. They had to stop to rest, and at the same time, take some alchemical pills to replenish the large amount of origin power that they had expended. Meanwhile, Ling Han and Hu Niu, on the other hand, were gorging themselves. Both of their body arts were very advanced, and they were able to display a miraculous effect here, because physical strength could be recovered as long as they ate their fill, unlike origin power, that had to absorb spiritual qi. They walked and stopped like this, and after about a month, the 18 branches converged, and massive boulders appeared in front of them. There were a great many people pushing the boulders up the mountain, all of them sweating profusely, their veins bulging. Some people were too weak, and let go, and the rolling boulder instantly came crashing over, pushing him to the ground and crushing him heavily. Strangely, the rolling boulder did not roll all the way down, but strangely stopped about 30 meters above Ling Han and the others, as if there was an invisible wall blocking it. These people naturally would not push the boulder for no reason. It should be a choice that they had to make. Let's try first. Ling Han walked up the mountain, but immediately discovered that not only was the boulder blocked by an invisible wall, but even he was blocked. He tried to push the rolling boulder again, but discovered that this boulder could actually break through that wall, allowing him to continue forward. However, this boulder was too heavy, causing him to immediately sweat profusely. Ling Han only tried to stop, and let the rolling boulder return to its place. Then he tried to directly break through that invisible wall. But no matter what he did, he could not do anything. Pooh! Someone immediately sneered. Idiot! Wasn't this obvious? Everyone was pushing the boulder. Did you think everyone was stupid? Ling Han gave him a sidelong glance and did not speak. If he followed others in everything, how could he possibly stand out? Of course, perhaps there really was only one method, pushing the boulder up the mountain. But if he chose to follow the crowd without even trying, how could such a person have a future? In this place, Ling Han's 9 source powers of heaven and earth seemed to have fallen into a deep slumber, and his divided soul naturally could not be released. Not only him, but the Empress and Hunyo were also the same, causing their battle prowess to be unprecedentedly weak. Thus, Ling Han was even more unable to break through this invisible wall. Hey, what do you mean by glaring at me? The person who had just sneered at Ling Han actually did not stop and shouted at Ling Han. What, you want to fight? Ling Han ignored him. He really could only push the boulder up the mountain. He wanted to see if there was any other way, naturally for the sake of the women, fearing that some people would not be able to hold on. Then, not only would they not be able to advance to the severing mundane tier, their lives might even be in danger. Previously, he had seen a few people run over by the rolling boulder and directly lose their lives. Seeing that Ling Han was not even willing to respond to him, that person naturally went mad with fury and charged towards Ling Han with large strides. Peng he had not reached when he was sent flying with a punch from a young man in cyan. Brother Ling, the young man in cyan said smilingly. Ling Han turned around and couldn't help but be surprised and said, Brother Yan. This person was actually Yin Xianlu. After entering here, Ling Han had recovered his original appearance. Haha, long time no see. Yin Xianlu clapped Ling Han's shoulder, then moved closer and said in a small voice, I have already joined the alliance, and will have to ask Brother Ling to take good care of me in the future. Ling Han was startled. He had not thought that the strange would be so fast, and had already gathered a group of people. He broke into a grin and said, Of course. Oh, that's right, Brother Ling. What level has your strength reached now? You actually managed to make even the strange submit wholeheartedly and prostrate himself in admiration of you. Yin Xianlu was very curious. He knew how strong the strange was, but the moment Ling Han was mentioned, the strange's expression was filled with reverence. This appearing on a monarch tier was definitely inconceivable. Just a dividing soul, Ling Han said. Oh, Yin Xianlu nodded, but was not too surprised. Chapter 2190. Yin Xianlu himself was a dividing soul, but he had just advanced into Yang soul. Thus he guessed that Ling Han was either Yang soul or Yin soul, so he naturally would not be too shocked. Of course, if he knew that Ling Han had not only formed 9 dividing soul, but could even insta-kill the 3 secrets of a mortal palace tier, his expression would definitely explode with shock. Ling Han was quite concerned about the alliance and asked, Brother Yen, how is our alliance developing now? The momentum is very good. Yin Xianlu nodded at first but then sighed. However, there are a few troublemakers that are not easy to deal with. They are not convinced, and are even more unconvinced that you, the alliance leader, have not shown your face yet. They are rubbing their hands together, waiting for you to appear so that they can defeat you and snatch the position of alliance leader. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh loudly. In terms of fighting, he had really never been afraid of anyone. Come, we can only push rocks up the mountain. The rolling rocks here were all over the ground, and everyone easily found one, and then pushed the rock up. 1 step, 2 steps, and after a short while, everyone was covered in sweat, all wanting to stop and rest. But pushing a rock, how could they possibly stop and rest? They could either withdraw and let the rock roll down, but they would also be pushed down, or they would be exhausted and crushed by the rolling rock. And even if they did not die, they would be heavily injured. Only by holding their breath and pushing forward with all their might could they successfully charge through. Everyone knew this, but there was a limit to one's strength. Once one surpassed their own limits, their willpower would begin to compromise. So this was a test of willpower. They continued to climb the mountain, but the speed at which they advanced became slower and slower. Ling Han continued to cheer the women on. They had not fought for too long, so their willpower naturally would not be too strong. Only their love for Ling Han was supporting them, and Ling Han was also stimulating this love of theirs, making them continue to persevere. There could be many reasons for perseverance, such as the desire for strength, the motivation for revenge, or love. The women all supported him with all their might. The severing mundane tier was really too important, separating celestial from mortal, so they had to strike the heaven and earth to advance to the severing mundane tier. Otherwise, even if they could sever the mundane, what they would sever would only be their love for Ling Han. This was something they would never allow to happen. Therefore, this stimulated their unwavering determination. They used their soft hands to push the rolling stones. Even though they were sweating profusely, they did not retreat. Ling Han could not help but admire the power of love. If you hated someone, you wouldn't be able to hold on for so long. But love was different. 5 days, 10 days, none of the girls gave up. Their eyes were filled with determination, as if they had been reborn. Ling Han couldn't help but nod. No wonder he had to go through so many trials before he could leap through the dragon gate. Because if he didn't go through so much, how could he cultivate a firm will? How could he become a peerless genius? Those with perseverance might not be able to become emperors. But those who were able to become emperors would definitely have a will that was as firm as iron. A month later, they suddenly felt the weight on their hands lighten. The huge rolling stone had actually disappeared. They were startled at first, but then they suddenly realized that they had already passed this test. Immediately, everyone fell to the ground, panting heavily. It had been a long and arduous journey, Ling Han said to the girls in relief. After going through this trial, it was as if everyone's spirit had obtained a new life. However, there are still many trials waiting for us. He raised his head towards the summit, but he still hadn't reached the summit. He didn't know how far away he was. Oh, that's right. How did Brother Yin come here so quickly? Ling Han asked casually. Oh, it was my master who specially sent me here, Yin Xianlu said. However, the dragon gate can only be leaped once. Repeated attempts are ineffective, and my master has long leaped over the dragon gate 5 epochs ago. Thus, he only sent me here this time, and has long since returned. What a good master. Ling Han nodded. In that case, as long as the celestial kings were older than an epoch, they would probably have already leaped over the dragon gate, and wouldn't come to join in the fun. If there were celestial kings that came here, they would definitely be younger than an epoch. If someone said that someone could become a celestial king, but couldn't even leap over the dragon gate, who would believe it? Too bad. He had initially wanted to find a few celestial kings to bash. What a coincidence. Yin Xianlu suddenly stood up and walked down the mountain. Ling Han followed his gaze and saw that 3 young men were currently pushing rolling rocks up. Though all of their backs were covered in sweat, all of their eyes were extremely bright, their fighting spirit soaring into the skies. Chengzi Xin Fuzhou Hao Xinjue. Yin Xianlu turned his head and said the names of these 3 people. Remember when I said that there are many in the alliance who are unconvinced that you are the alliance leader? These 3 are the ones making the most noise. As they spoke, those 3 people had also passed this trial and walked in front of Yin Xianlu. Brother Cheng, Brother Fu, Brother Hao. Yin Xianlu clasped his hands and greeted the 3 of them one by one. Yet these 3 people were very proud and ignored him. They indeed had the right to do so, because they were all earth souls, and also monarch tiers. With a flip of their hands, they could suppress Yin Xianlu. You are. Cheng Zixin fixed his eyes on Ling Han. Brother Fu, Brother Hao, doesn't this person look a little familiar? Hee. Now that you mention it, I do remember. Isn't this our alliance leader, Ling Han? Fuzhou suddenly laughed. They had all seen the memory image of Ling Han. As expected, Hao Xinjue nodded as well. Alliance leader Ling, can you teach me a thing or two? Fuzhou asked proudly. Even if his cultivation level was suppressed, he was unafraid. If they battled at the same cultivation level, even if he faced a celestial king, he was confident of victory. Prodigies were all proud, and this was something that Ling Han could accept. He stood up. All right, then let's exchange a few moves. Fuzhou moved and blasted out a punch at Ling Han. A monarch tier was a monarch tier. Even if his cultivation level was restricted to the mountain river tier, his battle prowess far surpassed that. A punch shot out, incredibly domineering. Ling Han casually parried. Pung! Fuzhou's punch landed on his palm, but there was not the slightest sound, as if it had been completely swallowed. Fuzhou looked surprised. Not bad, you have some ability. Meanwhile, Ling Han lightly shook his arm and forced Fuzhou back. Then, he pointed at Cheng Zixin and Hao Xinjue. The two of you come at me together. Hao Xinjue and Cheng Zixin exchanged a look, and both laughed loudly. We've never had the habit of teaming up. Nor do we need to. They each said this. Meanwhile, Fuzhou was furious. With him as his opponent, Ling Han actually dared to challenge Cheng Zixin and Hao Xinjue. How much did he look down on him? You're really arrogant. He leaped back and punched out at Ling Han again. Ling Han ignored him, and instead charged at Cheng Zixin and Hao Xinjue. He also shot out a punch, which turned into two bursts of fist force that blasted at the two of them. Damn it! The two of them were furious. They naturally disdained to team up with others, but they could not tolerate such provocation from Ling Han. They roared in fury, and both retaliated. Pung pung pung. The three of them instantly became entangled in battle. If there was no restriction on cultivation level, even if he was still at the Earth Soul tier, and had not formed the 9 dividing souls, Ling Han was confident that he could suppress these three within 100 moves. However, his cultivation level was suppressed to the Mountain River tier, and his advantage in battle prowess was also infinitely reduced. He could only fight to a draw with Cheng Zixin and the others. However, Cheng Zixin and the others were shocked to death. Chapter 2192. The air here was incredibly thin, and even those who cultivated to the celestial tier found it difficult to breathe. It had to be said that the power of heaven and earth was too terrifying. No matter how you struggled, you could only play within the rules permitted by heaven and earth. You thought you had transcended, but in reality, you couldn't escape the grasp of heaven and earth at all. Ling Han, Yin Xianlu, Cheng Zixin, and the others all had slightly troubled expressions. Their ambitions were lofty, and what they pursued was to not be bound by heaven and earth. But now that they had come, how could it be so easy? Perhaps they had to become a celestial king, to barely have the right to play against heaven and earth. The 9th heaven could be on equal footing with heaven and earth, and to want to transcend, they had to become a heavenly venerable. Ling Han clenched his fists, his resolve even firmer. Come on! He continued to encourage the girls, which made Cheng Zixin and the others puzzled. Even Yin Xianlu couldn't accept it. In their eyes, cultivation should be emotionless, and with so many attachments, how could one possibly achieve great success? Ling Han not only valued relationships, but also had a large number of beauties, and he could actually improve his sharpness in this aspect. Unbelievable. The higher they went, the scarier, the thinner the air. They all fell into a state of intense suffocation, their breathing becoming extremely rapid. They felt that the air they inhaled was not enough at all, and could only breathe in large mouthfuls. But the more they did so, the greater the exhaustion of their physical strength, making them feel incredibly uncomfortable. They only wanted to lie down and rest. If they lay down here, then they would never be able to wake up again. Although heaven and earth wanted to nurture talents, without a firm will, what use was this kind of trash? To Ling Han's surprise, Helian Xuanxue and the other girls actually didn't fall behind, and none of them really fainted. Instead, they all gritted their teeth and held on. Even Yi Shuang and the Lunar King were no exception. Along the way, they could see many people who had fallen on the ground. Some still had a sliver of breath, while others had their spirits completely destroyed. Climbing the Dragon Gate mountain and leaping over the Dragon Gate had never been an easy thing, but was filled with danger. Ling Han did not meddle in other people's business, and drew those who had fallen to the ground, but were not dead yet, into his spatial god tool. Perhaps there were some among them with strong willpower that could defeat heaven and earth, defeat themselves, and rely on their own strength to stand up? This was a test of life and death, but it was also a huge opportunity. 10 days later, they suddenly felt that their breathing had become smooth, and the feeling that they could suffocate to death at any time had disappeared. It turned out that they had already passed the second stage of the test. All of a sudden, everyone sat on the ground and gasped for air. This test of the heavens and earth is really deadly. Cheng Zixin panted heavily, At this moment, he could no longer care about his image as an emperor. He sat down on the ground, his forehead covered in sweat. It's just tempering my will. Brother Chung, could it be that you can't stand it? Fu Zhou pretended to be calm as he spoke. Chung Zixin pointed at the foot of the mountain. If you have the ability, go down there and come back again. I'm not stupid. I don't do such boring things. Fu Zhou naturally refused. If he were to be provoked, then he would really be stupid. Ling Han then took out the primordial heart-nourishing pill and fed it to everyone. This was a saint-grade medicinal pill that could recover one's origin power. And with the addition of the six-fold spirit enhancement, not only was its recovery effect even better, it was also far less resistant to medicinal effects than other medicinal pills. Very quickly, everyone recovered their strength and became full of vigor and vitality again. I definitely won't come back to this ghost mountain a second time. Yan Xianlu shook his head. Haha, I think so too, Hao Xinjue said smiling. They were just about to ascend the mountain when they heard the sounds of battle coming from afar. Very soon, they saw 4 people appear. But it was not 2 against 2, but rather 3 against 1. The only person was at a disadvantage, but his fists were wide open, and he had a domineering air of I'm the emperor, and the subjects all bow down to me. His defense was very stable, and he was still very far from defeat. In fact, it was possible that he was looking for a chance, and could explode with a fierce counterattack at any time to turn the situation around in one move. Though this person's fist technique is not very profound, it has a supreme domineering air. Fu Zhou immediately showed an expression of shock. Hao Xinjue nodded. That's right. I have a feeling that this fist technique was created by this person himself. But due to the limitation of his cultivation level, the might of this fist technique is not very strong. However, because it was created by himself, it is most in line with his own Tao, so it has displayed unexpected might. Not to mention anything else, merely this domineering air and confidence that he is unbeatable. This person definitely has great achievements. Chung Zixin also gave a very high evaluation, yet Ling Han's mouth was half open, and he showed an expression of shock. Isn't this second brother? Hunyou asked, tilting her head. She naturally called him after Ling Han. The Rain Emperor Empress nodded as well. This 1 against 3 man that Fu Zhou and the other monarch tiers gave a very high evaluation was actually the Rain Emperor. Not long after entering the celestial realm, the Rain Emperor left on his own. He wanted to explore this new world and was unwilling to be protected by Ling Han because he had lofty aspirations, and being protected by others was not his Tao. This separation was over 10,000 years, and he had not received any news of the Rain Emperor all this while. He had never thought that he would actually encounter him here. Rain Emperor, you will not be able to escape today. Xiao, another figure charged out, joining the battle. This time it became 4 against 1. However, this was not over. Another 2 figures appeared, charging over with a savage grin, also aiming straight for the Rain Emperor. 6 against 1. Even if the Rain Emperor's battle prowess was astonishing, it was 1 against 6, and his cultivation level was also restricted to the Mountain River tier, which reduced the advantage of being a 5th severance countless times over. Instantly, he was surrounded by danger. You have entered our Great Might sect for less than 3,000 years, and not only have you become a holy son, you actually want to cultivate the Great Might and Great Virtue scripture. That is a supreme secret technique that only the sect master can cultivate. Where do you think you are putting us? Today, we will send you on your way. The 6 of them each used a killing move and attacked consecutively. Though Ling Han was still unclear about the situation, how could he sit back and watch when his second brother was in danger? He immediately roared, and Xiao, he had already charged into the battle. He raised his fists and blasted out at the 6 people. Second brother, I am here. The Rain Emperor only glanced over and instantly laughed loudly. Fourth brother, you have come at just the right time. Peng! Ling Han forcibly blasted out an opening and stood back to back with the Rain Emperor. The 2 brothers were both unarmed, but they were like 2 ancient emperors that could suppress everything. Among the 6, a white-robed young man shouted, "Who are you?" Why are you meddling in other people's business? Are you stupid? Ling Han scoffed. This is my second brother, and I am his fourth brother. Why do you think I have to meddle in other people's business? The 6 people couldn't help but feel gloomy. Wasn't the Rain Emperor alone? Why did a fourth brother suddenly appear? Then, didn't there still eldest brother and third brother? Where were they? Sir, play it safe. We are definitely going to kill him today. Adding you is only one more person to kill. So why bother? A green-robed young man advised. The 6 of us are all monarch tiers. Do you think we can block them? Ling Han scoffed. So what if they were monarch tiers? He had already killed so many that he couldn't even remember how many. He calmly said, You want to compete in numbers, right? Come wives, brothers, come out for a walk. Hee hee. Hunyao Yin Xianlu. And the others all stood out, each of them exuding an intimidating aura. Chapter 2193. In a battle at the same cultivation level, king tiers could be overwhelmed by numbers, but emperor tiers were much more difficult. Even if they could be overwhelmed to death, it would only be possible if many king tiers joined forces. And for monarch tiers, that was practically impossible to kill. At first, those 6 people were brimming with confidence. Even if Ling Han and the Rain Emperor were both monarch tiers. So what if 6 monarch tiers against 2 monarch tiers? And with a bunch of random soldiers? They would only be crushed to smithereens. However, when Yen Xianlu and the others walked out, the 6 of them immediately showed expressions of shock, because the aura that these people exuded was world-shaking. Which one of them was not a dragon among men? Monarch tier. They were all fuck you monarch tiers. Fuck, how is this possible? Ordinarily speaking, even celestial king tier sects would find it difficult to have a monarch tier heir. Only great sects above the 5th heaven could nurture them, and they would only have one such heir in an era. Only great sects of the 9th heaven could nurture several monarch tier heirs at the same time. For example, the Great Might sect. The Great Might Celestial King was a top-notch existence even among 9th heaven celestial kings. Practically the king of the celestial realm, an invincible great emperor. But what was going on now? So many monarch tiers appeared at once. You are Yin Xianlu. You are Qing Zixin. Fu Zhou. How Xinjue? These 6 people actually recognized Yin Xianlu and the others, but they did not recognize the Empress and Hu Niu. Zhan Fei. Yin Xianlu nodded and turned to one of them. Feng Xingren. Qing Zixin also turned to one of them. Come. These people were all monarch tiers of the Eastern Celestial Realm. Perhaps they had seen each other before, or perhaps they had heard of each other, or had memories of each other. Brother Yen, give me some face, and don't get involved in this mess, Zhan Fei said solemnly. In a one-on-one battle, he was confident that he could defeat Yin Xianlu, but in a chaotic battle, because the Rain Emperor was too strong, and with the help of a monarch tier, the difficulty of killing him would increase by a few times. Yin Xianlu, however, shook his head. I would like to ask Brother Zhan to give me some face and stop here. How about that? On the other side, Feng Xingren was also asking for Qing Zixin's face, but was also rejected by Qing Zixin. He planned to be a peacemaker and resolve the grudges between the 2 sides. Must we fight? Shen Fei's expression darkened. They were definitely going to kill the Rain Emperor today. This young man was too frightening. He had only joined the sect for 3,000 years, yet he had killed his way from an outer sect disciple to the position of a holy son. Now he was even more outstanding, causing the other holy sons to pale in comparison. If they didn't kill him now, they wouldn't have another chance in a few years. Brother Zhan, harmony is the most important thing in all matters. Yin Xianlu was only trying to smooth things over. Ling Han, however, shook his head and interrupted. Brother Yen, you guys withdraw first. We only asked you to come out to let them know how many of us brothers there are. But if we really want to fight, us 2 brothers are enough. The Rain Emperor laughed loudly and said, 4th brother, you are still so domineering. Isn't 2nd brother the same? Ling Han also laughed. 2 maniacs. This was the common thought of Zhan Fei and the others. But they were happy with these 2's arrogance. Otherwise, the other side had so many monarch tiers, and their cultivation level had been weakened. Even if they were stronger, they actually wouldn't have much of an advantage. Now it was 6 against 2. No matter how they thought about it, victory was already within their grasp. Use your ultimate move from the start, and don't give them the chance to regret. The 6 of them communicated through their divine sense. No matter how arrogant they were, they couldn't possibly be truly stupid. If they were no match, they would definitely call for help, so they definitely couldn't give them the chance. The Empress and Hunyou were naturally filled with confidence in Ling Han, and immediately retreated to the back. Yan Xianlu and the others hesitated slightly, and then also retreated. After all, Ling Han had once fought 1 against 3, and beat Qing Zixin and the others until they were helpless. Second brother, it's fine to kill these trash, right? Ling Han asked. The lives of these 6 people were in the hands of the Rain Emperor with a single thought. Do as you wish. The Rain Emperor waved a hand. What monarch tier? They were completely insignificant to him. All right. Ling Han nodded. Now he could make his move without fear. You guys are really arrogant, Zhang Fei said darkly. He gave a look, and suddenly, the 6 monarch tiers moved at the same time, attacking Ling Han and the Rain Emperor. Mainly, the Rain Emperor was the only one. There was no meaning in killing Ling Han. Thus, 1 person was responsible for restraining Ling Han, while the remaining 5 were responsible for killing the Rain Emperor. So weak, Ling Han humphed and exploded with his full power. He swung out a furious punch. Hong! The fist intent vibrated, causing everyone to feel the fury in Ling Han's heart at this moment. The fist of fury naturally could only display its full might in a state of fury. Pung pung pung. As the punch was swung out, 3 people were instantly sent flying. The Rain Emperor's eyes lit up, and he said, "Fourth brother, you finally walked your own path." Though Ling Han had always been the strongest, the Rain Emperor had always been worried that if Ling Han continued to follow his own path, his future achievements would not surpass those of his predecessors, and there would be limitations. Of course, this kind of limitation might make most celestial kings envious, because this could be the 8th or even the 9th heaven. But if he blindly followed others, how could he truly transcend and jump out of the limitations of heaven and earth? Now that it was Ling Han who used such a fist technique, he was naturally gratified. Ling Han finally had his own path. Not as good as second brother. Ling Han sighed. This second brother was the true prodigy. He had long ago created his own martial art in the small world, and walked his own path. And the Rain Emperor was not like him, having a celestial venerable tier treasure like the Black Tower. Instead, he relied on himself for everything, yet he advanced into the ranks of monarch tiers. This was the most nature-defying aspect. If it was a fair competition, Ling Han felt that he was inferior to this second brother. The Rain Emperor laughed. There is no seniority in comprehension of Tao. Fourth brother, you've now caught up, and have already surpassed me. He also punched out, using the same fist technique, but the power of his fist technique was inferior to Ling Han's, and could only force Feng Xingren and the others back. Ling Han, however, knew his own limits. This was because his furious punch carried a sliver of the source power of heaven and earth, so it was naturally nature-defying. After this punch, Zhang Fei and the others all looked grim. A single Rain Emperor could just barely match 3 of them, and Ling Han was even stronger. He directly sent 3 of them flying with a single punch. Moreover, there were still quite a few monarch tiers eyeing them from the side, so how could they still succeed? Wishful thinking. Let's go. They immediately made up their minds. Starting a battle here was too much of a loss. They were already heavenly souls, and the Rain Emperor was only an earth soul. Once they left this place, not to say any one of them could kill the Rain Emperor, at least 2 of them working together would definitely be able to. The 6 of them ran up the mountain. The suppression of heaven and earth here was too strong, and even if a celestial king came, it would be very difficult for them to catch up. Ling Han wanted to chase after them, but was stopped by the Rain Emperor. There's no need to care about these pieces of trash. They're just perfect for me to practice. Earth soul against heavenly soul. And he actually said that 6 great heavenly soul monarch tiers were only enough for him to practice. This second brother was really more ambitious than the heavens. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Listen to second brother." He naturally would not take Zhang Fei and the others to heart. A true monarch tier should have an invincible heart. How could they possibly team up to kill others, just because they were jealous? Just from this point alone, he felt that these 6 people were not worth mentioning at all. "Come, we'll talk as we walk." The Rain Emperor draped his arm around Ling Han's shoulder, and Ling Han also draped his arm around the Rain Emperor's shoulder. The 2 brothers walked up the mountain, and along the way, they talked about their experiences in the past few years. Chapter 2194. The Rain Emperor's experiences were naturally very rough. After he began to travel alone, he worked as a servant in a great clan, and was a disciple in a small unranked sect. He was also once forced into the deep mountains to settle his grudges, and became a lone traveler. However, he was extremely resilient, and could walk out of difficult situations time and time again, becoming stronger and stronger. The Rain Emperor's luck was not bad. When he was at the 4th Severance, he entered an ancient site, and obtained a natural peach seal, allowing him to cultivate to the 5th Severance. After advancing into the Dividing Soul tier, he even obtained the remains of a 9th Heaven Celestial King, which he refined into his body. What was the benefit of this? Condensing 9 split souls. Completing this step did not necessarily require 9 source powers of heaven and earth. For example, Ji Wuming was a celestial king in his last life, and had transformed into 9 split souls. However, Ling Han did not become a celestial king in his last life, nor did he obtain the remains of a celestial king, so he could only rely on the source powers of heaven and earth. Relatively speaking, condensing 9 split souls, using the source powers of heaven and earth was definitely the strongest. A 9th Heaven Celestial King could only be on par with the heaven and earth, and could not truly replace the heaven and earth. Afterward, the Rain Emperor joined the Great Might sect, and quickly climbed all the way from an outer sect disciple to the position of Holy Sun. With his domineering and strength, he naturally left others in the dust, causing the other Holy Sons to pale in comparison. Thus, he was targeted by the combined forces of many Holy Sons, and finally turned into killing intent on Dragon's Gate Mountain, which launched an attack on him. However, Dragon's Gate Mountain was very special. Everyone's cultivation level was suppressed to the Mountain River tier, and the Rain Emperor created his own martial arts, and walked his own path, becoming even stronger under the situation where his cultivation level was suppressed. Added with Ling Han's help, the 6 Holy Sons were beaten to the point of fleeing. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh internally. This second brother's luck was actually ridiculously strong. He clearly did not have any heaven-defying treasures, nor was he the reincarnation of some 9th Heaven Celestial King, but it still allowed him to condense 9 split souls. As long as he broke through to the Heaven Soul tier, the Rain Emperor would be able to condense 9 split souls like a hot knife through butter, and look down on Immortal Palace tier. This was a height that even the Empress and Hunyo could not reach. Ling Han believed that there were indeed people who were favored by the heavens and the earth in this world. Of course, the Rain Emperor himself was also a genius in martial art. There was no doubt about this. Dragon Gate Mountain really tested one's will in all sorts of ways. Fortunately, they weren't emperors. Their will was like a sharp blade that was polished until it became stronger and stronger. After 7 years, they finally reached the top of the mountain. Everyone revealed a joyful expression, and hurriedly sped up. They saw a stone door at the top of the mountain. It looked ordinary, but the door frame was carved with hundreds of beasts, and their heads were all vivid and lifelike. These are all origin beasts. Someone said leisurely, the first living beings born in the world have a kind of scientian pressure. Even a mere statue can feel it. Moreover, besides the heavens and earth, no one else can carve a Genesis beast. Ling Han had also heard of such a saying, and nodded in his heart. That was why people said that Dragon's Gate Mountain was nurtured by heaven and earth. Now there was only one step left, and that was to leap through the Dragon Gate. Ling Han's gaze swept across the crowd. To his surprise, he saw a few familiar faces. Brother Ling. Someone walked over and clasped his hands in greeting to Ling Han. Yulan Fenghua. His face was full of confidence because not long ago, he had successfully broken through to the Immortal Palace tier, and was now a secret realm elite. After leaping through the Dragon Gate, he would receive a comprehensive improvement, and in the future, he might even be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Imperial Void Celestial King. Who was the Imperial Void Celestial King? He was a ninth heaven celestial king, and he might even become a heavenly venerable in the next few epochs. Ling Han nodded and said, "So it's Brother Yulan. After we go out, how about we have a spar?" Yulan Fenghua couldn't help but say. When they first entered the lost ancient world, he and Ling Han were both dividing souls, but he was clearly inferior to him. This was something he couldn't accept. Now that he had broken through to the Immortal Palace tier, he immediately challenged Ling Han to a battle. He didn't want to bully the weak, but just wanted to make Ling Han admit that he was no match for him, and satisfy his pride. Sure. Ling Han casually agreed. This person kept harboring evil intentions against him, and he also couldn't help but want to kill him. As for the void-resisting sect, he was such a genius, and as long as he changed his identity, he didn't believe that they would reject him. Ling Han. And Ran also floated over, and glared at Ling Han. Master is as important as a mountain to you. But you actually turned your back on him. Do you still have any humanity? Ling Han sighed softly. He was indeed grateful, guilty, and a little resentful towards Shang Jiwei. It was a very complicated feeling. He shook his head and said, "As for Aunt Wei, I will give her an explanation one day." Ungrateful villain, die. And Ran didn't pay him any attention and directly attacked. Boom! The Rain Emperor moved and blocked Ran's attack. "If you want to touch my fourth brother, you'll have to get past me first." And Ran was shocked. Though her cultivation level was suppressed, she was still a supreme monarch. This attack would cause ordinary monarchs to stagger back, but the Rain Emperor easily blocked it, and even shook her arm until it was numb. How domineering was this? She was not to be trifled with, and immediately shouted, charging towards the Rain Emperor. Pung pung pung, the two fought fiercely. The Rain Emperor attacked without any reservations, and Ran was forced back again and again. There were naturally people here who recognized Ran, and they couldn't help but be shocked. Who was this incredibly domineering man? He was too awesome. And Ran meanwhile couldn't believe it. In a battle of equals, she was actually suppressed? It should be known that even Shang Jiwei had said that she was only SOSO in the past. Didn't this mean that the Rain Emperor was even stronger than Shang Jiwei when she was young? She didn't believe it. And Ran roared endlessly. She definitely had to defeat the Rain Emperor. Ling Han, the Rain Emperor, and Ran suddenly had a strange thought. Could these two be a pair? Leaping through the Dragon's Gate, he stopped thinking. Such a domineering person like the Rain Emperor naturally had his own ideas, and there was no need for him to worry. All the girls were eager to give it a try. At this point, it could be said that they had completed 90% of the journey, but as the saying went, one who travels 100 miles is nearer to 90. Without this final leap, a fish would still be a fish, unable to transform into a dragon. And the final leap was not simple, either. Not everyone could succeed. One's conviction had to be firm. Someone leapt over, transforming into a dragon and flying down the mountain. There were others who fell down the mountain while screaming miserably. Naturally, they were smashed to pieces, consigned to eternal damnation. All the girls had determined expressions. Their determination at this moment was like divine gold, and love was supporting them. They definitely could not fail. They began to leap over the Dragon's Gate one by one. Ling Han's hands were clenched tightly. He was concerned about each and every one of them. First was Zhu Xian'er. She leaped over the Dragon's Gate, and instantly, her body elongated, transforming into a dragon's body. Her limbs, however, did not change much, only transforming into dragon claws. Her 4 claws grasped the clouds, and after circling once in the air, she descended the mountain. Then it was Li Xichan, Lu Yutong, and Helian Sun Shui. Every single one of them successfully passed, and when Shui Yinyu also crossed the Dragon Gate, Ling Han finally breathed a sigh of relief. Cheng Zixin, Yan Xianlu, and the others also leaped over the Dragon Gate one after another, transforming into dragons and descending the mountain. Brother Ling, I'll take my leave first, Yulan Fenghua said with a smile. She strode towards the dragon's gate, her white robes fluttering in the wind. With a light leap, he immediately turned into an azure dragon and soared into the sky. Second brother, stop fighting, Ling Han said to the Rain Emperor. Fine. The Rain Emperor was extremely decisive. He suddenly turned around, shook off and ran, and leaped over the dragon gate. Don't go. And Ran didn't give up and chased after him. Chapter 2196. Ling Han couldn't help snorting. This Yulan Fenghua was really petty. She actually attacked him at this time. And it was even a sneak attack. That's mean. Without turning his head, he swung his fist to meet the attack. Boom! A terrifying brilliance surged, as if the sky was falling. Yu Fenghua turned pale with fright. Ling Han had actually neutralized her attack. He was just a heavenly soul. How could he be so strong? He was like Ji Wuming, a ruthless person who had killed the first, second and third crypts as easily as chopping vegetables and melons. He was as monstrous as Ling Han. How could there be such perverts in the world? And there were two of them at the same time. Brother Yulan, is this your so-called exchanging pointers? Ling Han indifferently asked. This was a sneak attack. An embarrassed expression spread across Yulan Fenghua's face. At first, he had wanted to kill Ling Han with a single strike to eliminate any future trouble. Who would have thought that Ling Han would be so freakish? He was clearly only at the Heaven Soul stage, yet his battle prowess could rival a mystery monarch like him? Now that he was being mocked by Ling Han to his face, he was naturally very unhappy. He wanted nothing more than to kick Ling Han to the ends of the earth, so that he could extricate himself from this awkward situation. He steeled his heart. In the current situation, the more he said, the more mistakes he would make, so he might as well not say anything. Ji Wuming was going on a killing spree, looking like he was going to slaughter everyone. As long as he killed off Ling Han, no one would know what he had done today. Ling Han, it's time for you to die. He attacked once more. From his perspective, even though Ling Han was a freak, no matter how freakish he was only a heavenly soul. On the other hand, he was a secret emperor. As long as he gave his all, he would definitely win. Lawless heaven and earth law. He used a powerful move that was extremely powerful. He was the holy son of the Imperial Void sect. And he was also the personal disciple of the Imperial Void Immortal King. Not only did he grasp many immortal techniques, but they were also extremely powerful. This lawless heaven and earth technique was a secret technique that he could only use after advancing to the immortal palace realm. And its might was boundless. Hong. He seemed to have become the ruler of the heavens. When his palm pressed down, it could shatter the sky dome and directly strike the 9 underworlds. This move was quite powerful, Ling Han said in his heart, but he was not afraid at all. He punched out angrily towards the giant hand. Bam! The fist collided with the monstrous palm, and without any pause, it directly penetrated the palm. The rule power vibrated and instantly covered the entire palm. Then the giant palm collapsed. Ling Han's fist went straight for Yulan Fenghua. Yulan Fenghua hastily leaped up and dodged the attack. Her face was filled with disbelief. Not only did he fail to suppress Ling Han with a big move, but he was actually punched through instead. He was just a heavenly soul. But he was even stronger than a secret emperor like him. How is that possible? Although he was shocked, he didn't hesitate to take out a battle spear. Wung wung wung, the runes on the spear lit up, emitting a terrifying aura. He proudly said, "This is the weapon that my master used when he was at the Immortal Palace tier. Although it isn't a celestial tool, it has been imbued with my master's invincible battle intent. This spear is called Immortal Vanquishing." Immortal Vanquishing? What arrogant words. The strongest in the celestial realm were celestials, but the Imperial Void Celestial King named the spear Immortal Vanquishing. What kind of grand ambition was that? Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Unfortunately, your master is your master, and you are you. You can't mix the two together." Nonsense. In the future, I will definitely become the second master, Yulan Fenghua said loudly. You can't. Ling Han shook his head. You haven't cultivated the dividing soul tier to perfection. You're just mediocre. Small Tower's evaluation of the Imperial Void Celestial King was that he had the qualifications to break through to the Heavenly Venerable tier. So he had to have cultivated 9 divided souls. Yulan Fenghua hadn't cultivated 9 divided souls and wanted to become the second Imperial Void Celestial King? Wasn't that a fool's dream? When you die, I will carve the word mediocre on your tombstone. Yulan Fenghua charged over with a spear in hand. The tip of the spear swirled with a boundless murderous aura. It clearly wasn't a celestial tool, but it seemed sharper than one. This was because there was no immortal palace that could unleash the full might of a celestial tool. Conversely, 5-star and 6-star pseudo-celestial tools could unleash their full might in the hands of immortal palace tier elites. It was just like how the strength of a technique didn't matter. What was most suitable for oneself was the most powerful technique. Boom! A spear shot over, its ferocious might billowing into the skies. This was not just the combined might of Yulan Fenghua and the immortal vanquishing spear, but also the invincible will that the Imperial Void Celestial King had left in the immortal vanquishing spear. There was a chance to become a heavenly venerable. What did this mean? In the past, the Imperial Void Celestial King had definitely been a powerful prodigy like Ling Han and Ji Wuming. In fact, he might have even been slightly stronger. It was rumored that he had cultivated the severing mundane tier to the point that he couldn't sever anymore. And only then did he advance into the dividing soul tier. In other words, Yulan Fenghua was only piercing over with a spear, but it was equivalent to the full power strike of Yulan Fenghua, the Imperial Void Celestial King, and a 6-star pseudo-celestial tool. An expression of interest appeared on Ling Han's face. Of course, it wasn't because of Yulan Fenghua, but because of the Imperial Void Celestial King. To be more precise, it was because of the Imperial Void Celestial King, who was still at the Immortal Palace tier. Ling Han wanted to battle against the Imperial Void Celestial King in this kind of unconventional method. He raised his fist and punched toward the immortal vanquishing spear. Pooh! There was a splash of blood, and Ling Han's fist was instantly drenched in blood. Ha ha ha, with your mere flesh and blood, you actually dare to match the immortal vanquishing spear? You're really asking for trouble, Yulan Fenghua said with a cold chuckle. Meanwhile, Ling Han raised his fist and activated the source power of wood. His wound immediately healed at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. Although there was the Imperial Void Celestial King's martial art intent, as well as the destructive power of the 6-star pseudo-celestial tool, the source power of wood was at the Celestial King tier. Thus, it was naturally a piece of cake for him to dispel it. The strength of his physique was currently rising very slowly. He needed a vast amount of natural treasures to complement the indestructible Heaven Scroll in order to improve his physique. The Imperial Void Celestial King indeed lives up to his reputation. Ling Han nodded, a serious expression on his face. Although this was only the tip of the iceberg, the strength of the Imperial Void Celestial King had definitely been world-shaking when he had been at the Immortal Palace tier. It was because of this that he had been able to unleash a wisp of his ferocious might that even Ling Han's physique was no match for. After all, Ling Han was currently equivalent to a first secret and hadn't truly advanced into the Immortal Palace tier. Yulan Fenghua was furious. Ling Han had actually completely ignored her. Moreover, the more he praised the Imperial Void Celestial King's extraordinariness, the more he looked down on her. My master's might is naturally renowned throughout the world. How is it something that you can look up to? Yulan Fenghua said proudly. You're about to become the dust of history. Ling Han chuckled and said, if it were the Imperial Void Celestial King in the past, I would gladly fight you. Unfortunately, you're too weak, and you don't even have the qualifications to arouse my fighting spirit. Only this spear is able to pique my interest. Yulan Fenghua trembled in fury. He was a super monarch tier, and he had always been the one to guide the world and look down on the elites of the world. Now, however, he was actually being looked down upon to the bone by someone else. Only the spear in his hand could pique Ling Han's interest. You can be stubborn, but you'll soon regret it. Just how terrifying can I be when I'm furious? He calmed down and practically enunciated every word he spoke. Killing intent seethed all over his body. Ling Han broke into a grin and said, "Oh? Are you making a face? Die." Yulan Fenghua couldn't bear it any longer. With a battle cry, she charged over, and the immortal slaying spear swept horizontally, her murderous aura soaring into the sky. Chapter 2197. Yulan Fenghua was indeed very powerful. Being a super emperor was not just for show. Furthermore, he was known as the Second Imperial Void Celestial King, which was a very high evaluation. The immortal vanquishing spear was even more terrifying. It was a pseudo-celestial weapon that the Imperial Void Celestial King had used in the past, and it was imbued with his invincible battle intent and conviction. Even a sliver of it was earth-shattering. Most importantly, the immortal vanquishing spear was a 6-star pseudo-celestial weapon, comparable to a 5th secret elite, or even a Tharch. This was frightening. Ling Han was very freakish, but he was not freakish enough to resist a 5th secret Tharch. Thus, under the powerful attacks of the immortal vanquishing spear, he was forced to retreat again and again. Occasionally blood spurted out. If it were not for the fact that his physique and recovery ability were both freakish, he would have been killed by the immortal vanquishing spear. Yulan Fenghua laughed loudly. He had finally forced his enemy into a sorry state, which made him feel extremely refreshed. This spear is not bad. As he praised, Ji Wuming leaped over and stared at the immortal vanquishing spear, his eyes shining. He was clearly only a heavenly soul, but Yulan Fenghua suddenly felt a strong chill. It was as if his opponent was not a weakling, who was a major realm lower than him, but a lofty celestial king, who could even stand shoulder to shoulder with his master. He hurriedly shook his head and expelled this chill from his body. "What does it have to do with you?" He temporarily put away the spear. "I want to study it," Ji Wuming said with a smile. Ji Wuming chuckled. As he spoke, his 9 fused souls had already killed most of the people nearby and returned. Boom! His aura rose to another level, and even Yulan Fenghua could not help but want to kneel and worship him. The most powerful state of a dividing soul was definitely when all his divided souls were in his body, and his individual combat ability was at its peak. However, in a group battle, divided souls would be even more effective. Sensing the pressure from the immortal vanquishing spear, even Ji Wuming withdrew his 9 divided souls. It was clear that he was rather wary of this pseudo-celestial weapon. Wishful thinking. Yulan Fenghua sneered. What was wrong with this world? A mere split soul actually dared to provoke a mortal mansion, and a mystic emperor at that? Yet there were still 2 such people who didn't know what was good for them. And they actually had such strength. Ji Wuming looked at Ling Han with undisguised killing intent. "Ling Han, why don't we team up again? You want a gun?" Ling Han asked. "You already have an Empyrean Supreme Treasure. This spear is useless to you. As for me, I'm just taking it as a reference. After all, Imperial Void is that old fella's disciple," Ji Wuming said. "All right." Ling Han nodded. He really only wanted to fight with the immortal kings while within the immortal vanquishing spear. He didn't covet the treasure itself. Yulan Fenghua was both angry and shocked. These 2 actually dared to covet the immortal vanquishing spear, completely disregarding him. However, from their tone, it seemed like they knew about the existence of Empyreans. It had to be known that not long ago, he had also learned that the immortal vanquishing spear existed. He had even had an audience with Empyrean Feng Qing. With just a few casual pointers, he had been reborn, and his combat strength had tripled. But in Ji Wuming's mouth, Empyrean Feng Qing had been called an old fella. And Ling Han even had an Empyrean Supreme Treasure. Hiss, what the hell were these 2? That made sense. If they had nothing to do with Empyreans, how could there be something as ridiculous as a split soul fighting against an immortal mansion? I understand now. That's 9 split souls. Yulan Fenghua suddenly cried out. He had thought that Ji Wuming had used some sort of technique to create 9 split souls. He hadn't even considered the possibility that it was 9 split souls. But now, his heart trembled as he thought of this possibility. That was because there was also such a monster in Sealed Love Palace. That monster had clearly cultivated for a shorter period of time than him, but he could only kneel before him. In front of that monster, he was as insignificant as an ant. Now that feeling seemed to have returned. Fortunately, the monster in Sealed Love Palace had a higher cultivation than him, so he didn't even have the slightest bit of hope. But the two people in front of him were an entire major realm lower than him. And he also had the immortal vanquishing spear, a powerful killing weapon. This gave him enough confidence to face these two monsters. Wait, Ling Han must have also cultivated 9 split souls. He was extremely jealous. Ling Han had clearly been inferior to him before, but now he had completely left him in the dust. This made him feel extremely uncomfortable. Make your move, Ji Wuming said to Ling Han. If not for the immortal vanquishing spear, he could easily kill a trash like Yulan Fenghua. Ling Han nodded. Since Yulan Fenghua knew that he had an Empyrean supreme treasure, and he also had an extremely deep relationship with Empyrean Feng Qing, he naturally wouldn't let him leave alive. The two of them had teamed up before. Although they were enemies, their tacit understanding was extremely high. Xiao Xiao. The two of them attacked from the left and right, attacking Yulan Fenghua. Boom! Boundless light surged out of their hands, suppressing Yulan Fenghua. Scram! Yulan Fenghua roared, sweeping his spear horizontally. The immortal vanquishing spear was truly too powerful. The Imperial Void Celestial King had definitely cultivated 9 split souls back then. And this was a pseudo-celestial tool that he had tempered to the 5th secret. This was a terrifying killing weapon. Thus, even if Ling Han and Ji Wuming joined forces, they would definitely be completely suppressed by Yulan Fenghua. Yulan Fenghua, however, didn't look pleased at all. If their cultivation levels were similar, then he could suppress 2 peerless monsters, which proved that he was stronger. But the current situation was that Ling Han and Ji Wuming's cultivation levels were lower than his, and he had only gained the upper hand because of the immortal vanquishing spear. If they didn't rely on their celestial tools, then he wouldn't be a match for either Ling Han or Ji Wuming. This caused his face to turn ashen, and the killing intent in his heart surged endlessly. Since that was the case, then he would kill these 2 monsters. Then he wouldn't have to suffer such embarrassment. Kill! The immortal vanquishing spear danced, and Yulan Fenghua was like a god of war, gaining the upper hand. Heavenly souls are only heavenly souls in the end, he said in disdain. Ling Han humphed, and finally unleashed a powerful technique. The source power collision circulated, and boom! He unleashed a shock wave in front of him. Countless symbols danced, and it was filled with destructive power. Wang! The immortal vanquishing spear glowed, forming a barrier of light in front of Yulan Fenghua, protecting him. However, the might of the immortal vanquishing spear was too domineering. Even if Yulan Fenghua had the protection of the immortal vanquishing spear, he still slid back for a full kilometer before coming to a stop, leaving behind 2 deep footprints on the ground. Ha 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 ha! The barrier of light dissipated, and Yulan Fenghua laughed loudly. This attack from Ling Han caused him to feel a chill that came from his very soul. However, the immortal vanquishing spear was indeed worthy of being the pseudo-celestial tool that the Imperial Void Celestial King had used in the past. It could be used for both offense and defense, and had reached the pinnacle of the Immortal Palace tier. You're nothing more than clay chickens and pottery dogs, he said with feigned disdain. In truth, he was extremely jealous. Ji Wuming's figure flashed, and he had already charged in front of Yulan Fenghua. A swastika appeared on his forehead, and transformed into an eye. It suddenly opened, and lotus flowers instantly bloomed around him. He tapped out with a finger, and it was as if he had been enlightened by a Buddha, transcending the mortal world. Myriad World Finger! Yulan Fenghua suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 2198. Yulan Fenghua was indescribably shocked. The Myriad World Finger was a supreme Buddhist technique. The Buddhist sect was a huge power. Now the founder of the sect, the 9 Lanterns ancient Buddha, had long disappeared. It was said that he had already passed away, but his 3 disciples were still supporting the name of the Buddhist sect. The 3 of them were respectfully addressed as Buddhist monarchs. 2 of them were 9th Firmament Immortal Monarchs, while the other was an 8th Firmament Immortal Monarch. It was said that he had a chance of advancing to the ninth firmament. Even the Void Defense sect had to give some face to such a great sect. Yulan Fenghua had also fought with the Arhat of the current generation. Her opponent's magical techniques were like heavenly flowers, which made her gasp in amazement. She thought that this was a rare genius that could even be compared to the evildoer from the Sealed Emotion Palace. What shocked him the most was Shi Chanzi's Myriad Worlds finger. That finger had taught him what the difference between them was, and it had always been engraved in his mind. Every time he thought about it, he would shudder. The Myriad Worlds finger was the true core mystic art of the Buddhist sect. Different realms would result in different might when used. One had to comprehend the Buddha heart to execute it. Legend had it that 9 lanterns had once used the Myriad Worlds finger to kill a 9th-tier immortal king. But now, Ji Wuming had actually managed to execute this secret technique that was not passed down. Could he be a descendant of Buddhism? That was impossible. The moment they entered the Buddhist sect, all of their worries would be gone, and all of them would be bald. How could there be someone like Ji Wuming? Hong, as the finger pointed over, the 6 paths opened and manifested the 6 paths reincarnation. Yulan Fenghua was even more shocked. Although Ji Wuming's current realm was lower than Shi Chanzi's, in terms of attainment of the Myriad Worlds finger, Ji Wuming was superior. How could this be? Boom! The immortal vanquishing spear unleashed a terrifying attack that dissipated one Shi's attack. So what if you're an Arhat? Yulan Feng laughed after a moment of surprise. The Myriad World finger was a huge shadow in his heart, but it was completely useless in front of him. This gave him a great sense of satisfaction. You too, I'll send you on your way today. Ling Han shook his head. Nameless Ji, if there's a list of people I'm most unwilling to die with, you're definitely at the top of my list. You can only be ranked 5th, Ji Wuming said after thinking about it seriously. Death is inevitable, but it won't happen today. It's even more impossible for me to die at the hands of trash like you, Ling Han said to Yulan Fenghua, his face full of disdain. You're still so stubborn even in the face of death. Yu Fenghua was infuriated. He brandished the immortal vanquishing spear and unleashed one terrifying attack after another. At the same time, he was preparing to unleash a powerful attack. Ling Han and Ji Wuming moved like lightning, dodging the immortal vanquishing spear's attacks, while launching counterattacks to accelerate the depletion of the immortal vanquishing spear's energy. When martial artists were exhausted from fighting, they could eat elixirs to recover their essence force. However, it was impossible for quasi-immortal weapons to do so. Thus, Ling Han and Ji Wuming's plan was to exhaust the energy in the immortal vanquishing spear. As long as they could exhaust it, the immortal vanquishing spear would only be a weapon forged from 6-star pseudo-immortal metal. This was a stupid method, but there was no other way. The level of the immortal vanquishing spear was far too high. If it were any other heavenly soul, even a 4th or 5th secret elite would only be able to kneel before the immortal vanquishing spear, let alone a heavenly soul. Not only could Ling Han and Ji Wuming contend with them, but they could even defeat them. What else could they do? Yulan Fenghua naturally knew this. Thus, he was preparing to unleash a powerful attack to take down Ling Han and Ji Wuming in one fell swoop. Destroy the world. He had already finished accumulating power, and he suddenly stabbed the immortal vanquishing spear into the ground. Hong, a golden light spread out, continuously expanding in all directions. Wherever the golden light passed, the ground would immediately turn into metal, reflecting a blinding light. A chill immediately rose up in Ling Han. He felt that if he was swept by the golden light, his body would instantly turn into metal. However, the source of metal in his body was exuding a joyful intent, as if it was filled with desire for this power. A thought flashed through his mind, and he gave up on the idea of entering the Black Tower. As the golden light swept over, he instantly turned into a golden statue that stood on the golden ground. On the other side, the swastika symbol appeared on Ji Wuming's forehead, and his body also shone with a dazzling golden light. It was as if he had been affected by the attack from the immortal vanquishing spear. The golden light swept out for hundreds of kilometers, before finally stopping. Everything within a range of hundreds of kilometers had turned golden, turning into a world of metal. Yulan Fenghua pulled out the immortal vanquishing spear and instantly laughed loudly. He had eliminated 2 powerful enemies with a single move, and this caused all the pores on his body to relax. He was extremely pleased. However, his smile quickly disappeared. The metallization on Ling Han's body was gradually fading, and the speed was very fast. Meanwhile, Ji Wuming was even more astonishing. He directly walked out with a metal body, as if he were a golden Buddha. Fuck. Yulan Fenghua was so shocked that his eyeballs were about to pop out. He had unleashed a powerful attack, but the result was like this. Were these 2 really human? Ling Han laughed loudly. This attack is very comfortable. Let's do it again. He was not the one who was comfortable. Instead, the source of metal devoured the regulations of metal that the immortal vanquishing spear had unleashed, nourishing its body. Let's do it again. Yulan Fenghua shook her head in her mind. To say nothing of the fact that it was ineffective against Ling Han and Ji Wuming. Unleashing a second world-destroying attack was equivalent to wasting energy. Even if it was effective, he could not possibly do it, because the immortal vanquishing spear could only unleash a world-destroying attack once in a short period of time. The symbols that had been activated with great difficulty had all dimmed. Now, only a few were still glowing, and its might had been greatly reduced. Humph! Ji Wuming retreated from his golden Buddha state, but his aura did not weaken in the slightest. Instead, it became even more terrifying. There was a towering demonic chi around him, and it was as if he had suddenly transformed from a great Buddha that had saved the world into a demon lord that could destroy the world. He charged toward Yulan Fenghua, his palms slamming out ferociously. Ling Han did not hold back either. He mainly used his furious fists, and occasionally unleashed a collision of source power. As for the divine demon sword, he did not use it. Moreover, it was only a 4-star pseudo-celestial tool. If it clashed head-on with the immortal vanquishing spear, it would only shatter. Yulan Fenghua's heart grew colder and colder. Not only did Ling Han and Ji Wuming possess astonishing battle prowess, their defenses were also terrifyingly powerful. Even if he had the upper hand, so what? He could not turn this advantage into victory. He gritted his teeth, and suddenly turned his spear, wanting to carve out a path of blood. Inescapable net. Ji Wuming waved his right hand, and a large net shot out toward Yulan Fenghua. Yulan Fenghua humphed, and raised his spear, piercing it toward the large net. In his opinion, this large net would naturally shatter under the attack of the immortal vanquishing spear. However, the reality was completely different. This spear strike only pushed the large net open slightly, but it did not shatter. It possessed astonishing toughness and elasticity. Yulan Fenghua couldn't help but be stunned. This was the immortal vanquishing spear. Yet it was actually unable to pierce through this large net. Meanwhile, Ji Wuming turned to smile at Ling Han, and said, "This was originally prepared for you. Fuck." Chapter 2200. Ling Han made his move. This was the suppression of an immortal palace tier on a dividing soul. So how could Zhang Fei and the others match it? In a mere instant, the 5 of them were all killed. And they didn't even have the chance to use their trump cards. Let's go. Ling Han grabbed everyone, and then spread out the void spirit space. His figure flickered, and very quickly disappeared. Only when they had left for about 15 minutes, did an ascending origin tier elite arrive. They could only see the ground covered in blood, as well as the remnant spirit fragments that hadn't dissipated. They were screaming, unwilling to return to the heaven and earth. However, this was destined to be futile. Without a physical body, the spirit couldn't last long. What more, these were just some fragments. After walking for a long time, Ling Han finally put everyone down, including Yin Xianlu and the others. Ji Wuming gave him some face, and didn't make a move on the people beside him. Perhaps he also knew that if he made a move on these people, Ling Han would definitely stop him, and the 2 of them would enter into a battle ahead of time. Then, Ji Wuming naturally wouldn't be able to hunt down others. "Brother Ling, do you have any plans to return to the Eastern Celestial Realm?" Yin Xianlu and the other prodigies that came from the Eastern Celestial Realm all asked. Ling Han shook his head. He was going to disguise himself next, and enter the void-resisting sect. His final goal was the sealed emotion palace, so he naturally couldn't return to the Eastern Celestial Realm. Ling Han, we will wait for your return. The alliance naturally can't be without a leader, Cheng Zixin said. By now he was completely convinced by Ling Han. That's right. Fu Zhou nodded as well. Ling Han thought for a moment. I will find some time to return to the Eastern Celestial Realm. Before that, I will leave the matters of the alliance to you guys. I hope that you guys can advance your cultivation level as soon as possible, because there isn't much time left for us. He wasn't a selfish person. At that time, he would let everyone enter the Black Tower and enjoy the 100,000 times acceleration of time flow. Before the survival of the heaven and earth, everything else could be set aside. Yin Xianlu and the others agreed, and then left. They couldn't stay for too long. After all, they still needed the Celestial King to bring them back. How could they let the Celestial King wait for too long? Second brother, are you returning to the Great Might sect? Ling Han asked. The Rain Emperor, on the other hand, was very casual. It doesn't matter. In any case, I go everywhere to train, and everything is for the sake of becoming stronger. Ling Han nodded. The two brothers had finally reunited after being separated for more than 10,000 years. He did not want to be separated from his second brother immediately. No matter what, he wanted to spend more time with them. Fourth brother, what are your plans? The Rain Emperor countered with a question. Ling Han naturally would not hide anything from the Rain Emperor, and told him about his desire to enter the Imperial Void sect. Then second brother will accompany you, the Rain Emperor said. He was also very curious about the celestial venerable Tier, and viewed him as a tall mountain that he had to conquer. Wang, just at this time, streaks of multicolored light suddenly appeared in the sky. After that, a law decree appeared, 9-colored immortal light coiled around it. After that, characters jumped out one after another, boundless might spreading out. It was as if an immortal king had descended, looking down on the masses. It was an immortal king's decree, and it was written by a 9th firmament immortal king. Could it be that Ji Wuming's massacre had enraged a 9th firmament immortal king, to the point of writing a decree to capture him? At this moment, the characters stopped jumping and turned into words. The calamity is imminent, and drastic changes are imminent. In order to ignite the spark of our celestial realm, Immortal King Yu Qingyan has joined forces with 21 other 9th firmament immortal kings to establish the Saint Source Academy. We will nurture supreme geniuses to resist the impending tide of darkness. Anyone who believes that their talent is superior to others can head to Twin Horse, Heavenly Beautiful Water City. There will be people in charge of the selection. This paragraph of text lasted for about an hour. Then the 9-colored light dissipated, and it completely disappeared without a trace. Instantly, the entire celestial realm was in an uproar. Yes, this law decree did not only appear in the sky above Ling Han and the others, but it also appeared in every corner of the celestial realm. Everyone in the eastern and western celestial realms could see it, even if they were blind. This was a law of Tao, and it directly entered one's mind. No one doubted the authenticity of this law decree, because the 9-colored light was the unique symbol of a 9th firmament immortal king. And if there was a 9th firmament immortal king, who was bored enough to come and play tricks on the people of the world, even if everyone was fooled, they should feel very honored. Meanwhile, Ling Han and the others looked at each other, a strong sense of unease rising in their hearts. First, the heaven and earth themselves broke the rules, allowing the Dragon's Gate Mountain to appear ahead of time. Then, many 9th firmament immortal kings joined forces to establish an academy, and recruited prodigies from all over the world with the intention of resisting the tide of darkness. One had to realize that before this, almost no one knew of the existence of the otherworldly realm, and that they were currently attempting to invade the celestial realm and invade this world. Although the law decree did not clearly explain the origins of the tide of darkness, it pointed out that the celestial realm was currently facing a huge crisis. What did this mean? The time of the otherworldly realm's attack might be far earlier than we expected, Ling Han said solemnly. An unexpected change must have happened at the connecting point of the two realms, causing the passageway to become more stable. This has also caused the immortal kings at the front lines to feel pressure, the empress speculated. Hunyo took a bite of a chicken drumstick and said, "No matter what comes, Nyo will defeat them all." Meanwhile, the Rain Emperor said, "Then we should first go to this Saint Source Academy." Everyone nodded. As many as 22 Ninth Firmament Celestial Kings worked together to establish an academy. How shocking was this? Just in terms of backing, this surpassed any great sect in the world. All right, let's go to the Saint Source Academy first. Ling Han also nodded. In that case, it was estimated that all the prodigies of the entire celestial realm would gather, and at that time, they would be able to meet the most outstanding prodigies of the world. As for the void-resisting sect, they would think about it later. In any case, they would not run away. However, they did not immediately head to the Twin Horse Heavens, but first went to find a mystery realm for the severing mundane tier. Helian Xuanxue and the other women had all improved, and were confident that they could advance to the severing mundane tier by striking the heaven and earth. In the past, they did not dare to do it, but it was not that they could not do it. Now the conditions were naturally right. Meanwhile, the Rain Emperor first went to break through to the heavenly soul tier, and everyone agreed to meet again in the Twin Horse Heaven's exquisite water city. Thus, Ling Han led the women on their way, searching for the severing mundane tier mystery realm that would open soon. Their luck was not bad. There was a severing mundane tier mystery realm that would open in 27 years. They immediately rushed over and spent more than 3 years on the road. Then, they waited for more than 20 years, and the women joined forces to enter. This Ling Han could not help, and could only wait outside. Fortunately, 2 years later, none of the women were missing. They all walked out of the mystery realm, and they all broke through to the severing mundane tier. Ling Han naturally would not expect them to cultivate to the 5th severance. Being able to strike the heaven and earth to attain Tao was enough. They then headed towards the Twin Horse Heavens. This delay lasted for more than 20 years, and many major events happened during this period. The most sensational was naturally the establishment of the Saint Source Academy. It was indeed established by the joint efforts of more than 29th Firmament Celestial Kings. And the students were all geniuses of the present age. However, it was not limited to martial art. Alchemy geniuses, formation geniuses, and craftsmen were also included. As long as they had a skill, they had a chance to join the academy. But no matter what, the most famous was naturally the martial art geniuses. In just over 20 years' time, a few disciples of the Saint Source Academy had become famous in the celestial realm. It could be said that almost everyone knew of them. Ji Wuming actually managed to sneak in as well. Ling Han was dumbfounded. Chapter 2201. There were a few disciples of the Saint Source Academy who were incredibly outstanding, and their names had already shaken the world in a mere 20-odd years. Ji Wuming, Shi Chanzi, Desolation, and Jialan were the four most outstanding people. It was said that each of them possessed sky-high battle prowess, and even the elites of the older generation were incredibly wary of them. Ling Han wasn't surprised that Ji Wuming could stand out and become the most outstanding disciple of the Saint Source Academy, but rather that this guy had killed people like Scything Flax, and countless prodigies had died at his hands. How could he be able to openly make a name for himself in the Saint Source Academy? However, this Shi Chanzi, Desolation, and Jialan can be mentioned in the same breath as Ji Wuming, so it can be seen that their strength is definitely not inferior to Ji Wuming's. This is very frightening, Ling Han murmured. Freaks like him and Ji Wuming should be rare in an era. One had obtained a heavenly venerate treasure, and the other was the reincarnation of a 9th heaven celestial king. They were too unique. But thinking about it, wasn't the Rain Emperor also freakish? The Rain Emperor could form 9 divided souls, so why couldn't there be others like him? Ling Han couldn't help but be filled with fighting spirit. He had always treated Ji Wuming as his only opponent, but now there were 3 more heaven-defying freaks, so he was very eager to battle with them. In these 20-odd years, Ling Han hadn't been idle. He had practically spent all his time cultivating in the Black Tower, tempering his dividing soul tier to an incredibly solid state before attempting to break through to the immortal palace tier. If he wanted to become the strongest, his foundation had to be solid, and he definitely couldn't be too hasty. 20-odd years was nothing at all. Ling Han estimated that he would need another 100 years to be able to temper his dividing soul to an impeccable level. And this was naturally calculated in terms of time in the real world. In the Black Tower, this time would be astonishingly long. He didn't obtain a breakthrough in martial art, but Ling Han found hope in alchemy. He was only a step away from the 7th refinement. At most 10 years, I will definitely be able to advance to the 7th refinement, he said with a nod. The main reason was that he had too few celestial medicines by his side, so he couldn't cook without rice. There was nothing that could be done. Celestial medicines were celestial medicines, and even if they weren't very old, they were still very rare. Let's go find second brother first. Then we'll go to St. Source Academy. With so many 9th Firmament Immortal Monarchs joining forces, I'm afraid their goal isn't to nurture a few more 9th Firmament Immortal Monarchs. Instead, they're aiming for a heavenly venerate, muttered Ling Han. It can be imagined that the cultivation resources in the St. Source Academy will be astonishingly abundant, and celestial medicines can be casually given out, the Empress said. Niu wants to eat. Niu shouted. Ling Han laughed heartily. All right, let's go. The majority of them entered into the Black Tower and continued to cultivate diligently. Their cultivation levels were too low, so it would greatly affect their speed when they traveled long distances. Only Ling Han, the Empress, and Niu traveled together. After another 3 years, they finally arrived at Double Horse Sky. After entering the Twin Horse Heavens, it was much faster to go to Lishui City. It only took them half a month to arrive at Lishui City. As usual, they had to pay an entrance fee to enter the city. For Ling Han, it was naturally a small matter. Though the Empress and Niu were astonishingly beautiful, their aura was too strong, and the guards didn't dare to say anything. They didn't encounter any profligate young masters, so they naturally didn't cause any trouble. Thus, they smoothly entered the city, and then began to inquire about the Rain Emperor's whereabouts. It had been 30 years since they parted. The Rain Emperor had probably broken through to the Heavenly Soul tier long ago, and came to this city to wait. Ling Han felt that as long as the Rain Emperor arrived first, this second brother would definitely have a way for him to find him. Why? The Rain Emperor was someone who had been an emperor before, and was a wise ruler at that. How could he not even be able to do such a small thing? Sure enough, Ling Han only asked around, and discovered that 2 new alchemical pill shops had opened in the city. One was called the Rain Emperor Pavilion, and the other was called the Han Forest Pavilion. These 2 shops were definitely opened by the Rain Emperor, and his intention was to attract Ling Han over. As expected, the Rain Emperor had a way. Ling Han asked around. Because the Rain Emperor Pavilion was closer to him, he naturally went there. Traveling alone, Niu and the Empress brought the women to go shopping. The cities of the Celestial Realm were all like this. Though they were called cities, they were as large as planets. Thus, though the Rain Emperor Pavilion was closer to Ling Han, it was still several tens of thousands of miles away. Thankfully, for the present Ling Han, this was only a matter of a short while. Very soon, he arrived at a large city. In truth, this could only be called a town. No matter how big it was useless. It was naturally impossible for there to be a city within a city. He entered into the town, and very soon arrived at the Rain Emperor Pavilion. However, as his eyes swept over, he couldn't help but frown. The shop was in a mess. Tables and chairs had been overturned, and a great many employees were either sitting or lying down. All of them were covered in bloodstains, and their faces were swollen. Some even had broken limbs. Had someone just messed around with them? Ling Han walked in and asked, "Where's your boss?" "I'm sorry, this shop needs to rest for a period of time, so please go somewhere else, customer." A middle-aged man came out to receive him. He was actually still in the Severing Mundane tier, but there was a black circle around his left eye. Clearly, he had been struck by someone. At first, he still had a scholarly air, but now he looked very disheveled. Ling Han chuckled. "I'm a friend of your boss. The middle-aged man glanced at Ling Han, and suddenly looked as if he had come to a realization. Is the guest surnamed Ling? Ling Han. Ling Han nodded. Please wait a moment. The middle-aged man immediately showed a respectful expression. My master has already received the news, and will soon arrive. Please enter the shop, and have a cup of fragrant tea, customer. All right. Ling Han agreed. He was just about to go up to the second floor, when he saw over a dozen people suddenly rush in through the door, all of them wearing unfriendly expressions. Why have you guys come again? The middle-aged man asked in a trembling voice, an obvious expression of fear on his face. From the word again, it could be deduced that it was these people who had wreaked havoc in the shop previously, beating the workers black and blue. Ling Han suddenly paused, and walked over to these people. The strength of this group was not weak. 7 of them had reached the Severing Mundane tier, and the others were in the Genesis tier. If they were in a 1-star city, they could establish a great clan. Of course we're here to collect money. A Severing Mundane tier sat down on the only chair that was still intact. Didn't we just pay? The middle-aged man appeared slightly angry. These people were not honest, and after collecting protection fees, they beat them up, smashing many things in the shop. The seated Severing Mundane tier was a man with a large beard. He crossed his legs and looked very ruffian. Just now we collected protection fees for opening a medicine shop, but I heard that you also sell sex here, so I want to collect more. Sell sex? The middle-aged man gaped. We opened a medicine shop, so how could it have anything to do with selling sex? This was completely lying through one's teeth, deliberately bullying others. Ling Han turned and walked down the stairs and said, You guys were ordered by someone, right? Come tell me who told you guys to do this. Ling Han could understand a small gang collecting protection fees, but this was already deliberately provoking trouble and making things difficult. The bearded man faltered slightly and said, What nonsense are you talking about? Also, what are you again? Ling Han stretched out a hand, and everyone only felt a blur before their eyes, and the bearded man had landed in Ling Han's hand. He smiled and said, You can choose to tell me or not, but I have a hobby, and that is to tear people into pieces. Are you interested in trying? Cell phone reading is easier. Chapter 2202. The bearded man involuntarily felt a chill in his heart. He did not take Ling Han seriously at all. But who would have thought that the latter's strength would be so terrifying? Taking him down with a single move? It was practically as easy as blowing off dust. Seeing the ominous glint in Ling Han's eyes, he involuntarily shivered and said, I'll speak. I'll speak. It was our gang leader who told me to come. Oh, who is your gang leader? Ling Han asked with a smile. As he spoke, he patted the bearded man's shoulder, and with each pat, the bearded man could not help but scream in pain, cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. Our gang leader is Mao Haitao. The bearded man answered simply and directly. Ling Han gave an "oh," and then said, Your gang leader would not have gone crazy for no reason, and sent you guys to make trouble, right? The bearded man said, It's Lu Jun. Young Master Jun came to find our gang leader, and asked the gang leader to act on his behalf, and make trouble for the Rain Emperor Pavilion. Oh, and who is this Lu Jun? Ling Han's interest was slightly piqued. Young Master Jun. The bearded man dragged out his voice, and his entire person became smug, as if he had become a different person. But when Ling Han patted his shoulder, he immediately became obedient and said, Young Master Jun is a disciple of the Saint Source Academy. When he said the words Saint Source Academy, his eyes shone brightly. To the masses of the vast celestial realm, Ninth Heaven celestial kings were naturally the most powerful beings in the world, and the Saint Source Academy, that was jointly established by over 29th Heaven celestial kings, was naturally extremely awesome. Those that could enter it were all top prodigies, and would definitely become important figures in the future. This Lu Jun was a disciple of the Saint Source Academy, and was naturally respected by the bearded man as a god. Is he very powerful? Ling Han asked with a smile. Prodigies like Yin Xianlu definitely had the right to enter the Saint Source Academy. But compared to Ji Wuming, Shi Chanzi, and the others, they were clearly not on the same level. What level did this Lu Jun belong to? Young Master Jun is from the Alchemy Institution. He is so young, yet is already a 3-star alchemist, and has even reached the 4th refinement in spirit refinement. It is said that within 100 years, he will definitely advance to the 5th refinement and become a 4-star alchemist. The bearded man boasted for Lu Jun, as if that Lu Jun was his brother or son. Alchemist Ling Han suddenly understood why Lu Jun wanted to target the Rain Emperor Pavilion. It was most likely closely related to alchemical pills. Then do you know why Lu Jun wants you to do this? The man with the large beard nodded and said, Young Master Jun won the position of the Rain Emperor's Pavilion and wanted to buy it to open his own medicine shop. However, the owner of this place didn't agree, so young Master Jun thought of this method to force that owner away. Ling Han could not help but smirk coldly. The Rain Emperor naturally would not sell the shops here. That was the place where the brothers had reunited. Go back and tell that young Master Jun. Within 3 days, come and personally apologize. Also, don't forget to compensate for the losses here. Not a single cent less. Ling Han then said to the people in the shop. Everyone must be holding back their anger. Come on, do whatever you want. I'll kill anyone who dares to resist. He then looked at the group of hooligans. Wherever his gaze swept past, those people would tremble all over, feeling as though their souls were about to explode. The employees in the shop looked at each other for a while. At first, no one made a move, but eventually, a bold person walked out. Pung pung pung. He grabbed a person and gave them a good beating. As expected, that person did not dare to resist at all. He only used his hands to protect his head, and then curled up his legs to prevent his vital parts from being hit. Seeing this, the remaining employees also became bold. There were people who walked out one after another, and then they began to fight. They had been beaten up for no reason, so who wouldn't be holding back a belly full of anger? Previously they could not win, but now that there was someone to back them up, the anger in their hearts was completely released. When these employees were satisfied with the beating, Ling Han finally let the man with the large beard and the others go. All the employees looked at Ling Han with worshipful eyes, feeling that this person was like a god. There was a smile on Ling Han's face, and he even specially took out some alchemical pills to distribute to the employees, so that they could heal their wounds. As he saw it, this was not just a place where he could reunite with the Rain Emperor and his brother. In the future, he could really use this place as an alchemy shop, because he himself was a genius of alchemy. Saint Source Academy gathered the most outstanding geniuses in the entire Immortal region. It also had 22 Ninth Firmament Immortal Kings backing it. It would definitely attract a large number of people. Not only that, the geniuses who entered the academy would naturally have the shadows of the various major powers behind them. This meant that all the major powers in the immortal realms were united together. It was foreseeable that this place would become the most prosperous place. Naturally, there would be endless business opportunities and endless wealth. At present, Ling Han was still very concerned about money. There was nothing he could do about it. The Divine Demon Sword was still only a 4-star pseudo-celestial tool. And if he wanted to improve it further, he naturally needed a vast amount of level 20 godly metal. This was all money, and the amount would be incredibly frightening. Since this place was in Lu Juanzhong's hands, it meant that it was a feng shui treasure land. In the future, if Ling Han were to throw the pills he refined here, it would naturally bring him a lot of wealth. He was never one to suffer a loss. Since Lu Jun had made a mess here, the other party had to pay for it. There was no exception. It had only been less than half a day, and the Rain Emperor had returned. Fourth brother. Second brother. The Rain Emperor laughed loudly and strode over from the door. His aura was surging like the sea, and it was incredibly terrifying. Congratulations, second brother. You have successfully advanced to the Heavenly Soul tier, Ling Han said with a smile. The Rain Emperor smiled and pulled Ling Han upstairs. He brewed some fragrant tea and drank it with Ling Han. The two of them chatted for a while. Though the Rain Emperor had advanced to the Heavenly Soul tier, it had only been a short time. Furthermore, There were only 200 times faster time cultivation rooms in beautiful Water City. He had not even reached the peak stage of the Heavenly Soul tier, so it was naturally impossible for him to cultivate to the 9th division. Ling Han told him his plan, and the Rain Emperor naturally would not object. He only said that Ling Han could do as he pleased, and then entered into the Black Tower. He wanted to cultivate to the 9th division as soon as possible. The Rain Emperor began to cultivate, and Ling Han first brought the women over. They settled down in the Rain Emperor's pavilion, and then they began to patiently wait for the arrival of that young Master Jun. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed, but that young Master Jun did not appear until the 4th day. Young Master Lin, it's bad. Someone is blocking the door, saying that he wants to see the manager of this store. A shopkeeper ran over to report. Ling Han was currently sipping tea with the Empress. They had already cultivated the dividing soul tier to almost a perfect and flawless level, so there was no longer any meaning in cultivating in seclusion. The next step was to wait for the Immortal Palace Mystery Realm to open, and then enter to break through. Thus they were very leisurely now. Ling Han's focus was also on alchemy. The door to the 7th refinement could open at any time. Is he here? Ling Han asked the Empress with a smile. He was now using the name Han Lin, and had also changed his appearance slightly. With the heaven-deceiving technique that he had mastered to conceal his aura, even a 9th heaven celestial king would not be able to see through his true appearance if they did not look closely. The Empress also used the heaven-deceiving technique to change her appearance and aura. Though she was still extremely beautiful, she was not as breathtakingly beautiful as before. She nodded. You will know when you go down. Chapter 2204. Are you stupid? Ling Han shook his head. Of course I have to compensate you. What? Do you want to swagger out without paying? Lu Jun's face flushed red. He had never been threatened like this before. No, this was a blatant robbery. What, you don't want to pay? Ling Han glared. Lu Jun was extremely sullen. As an alchemist, he had countless martial arts friends. Everyone had alchemical needs, so they were naturally polite to him, even praising him to the heavens. However, a person who didn't play by the rules suddenly appeared, and his sense of superiority was immediately smashed to the point where it was completely bruised. He gritted his teeth and said, I'll pay. At this moment, he hated the fat man and the other two to the core. They claimed to be experts, causing him to waste so many alchemical pills on them. In the end, when it came time to use them, they were completely useless. Where's the money? Ling Han stretched out his hand. I don't have so many star stones on me, Lu Jun said, humiliated. Sorry if you want to put it on credit. This shop is small, so we don't do that. Ling Han patted Lu Jun's shoulder with a face full of smiles. He naturally had a good temper towards his customers. Lu Jun could only rummage through his body and take out all the star stones in his spatial divine tool. Of course, this was far from enough, so he could only use alchemical pills and medicinal ingredients to replace them. Of course, Ling Han did not mind. In any case, he was also an alchemist, so it saved him a lot of time. However, no matter how hard he tried, he could not gather such a huge sum of 200 million star stones. Even the fat man and the green man emptied their belongings and barely managed to gather 150 million star stones. Ling Han waved his hand and said, I've always been easy to talk to. Forget about the remaining amount. Easy to talk to? Lu Jun and the other three almost fainted from anger. They had only broken some furniture and injured a few people, but they actually had to pay 200 million star stones. Was there anyone as black-hearted as you? Are you very grateful to me? Ling Han said with a smile, but his eyes were extremely dangerous. Thank you very much. Lu Jun and the other three hurriedly nodded. A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. Of course, they could not provoke Ling Han now. Go. Ling Han magnanimously let the four of them go. After Lu Jun and the other three left the shop, they immediately ran away. They returned to St. Source Academy. Normally, Green Man and the other two did not have the qualifications to enter the academy. Other than possessing a special skill, One had to be at least an emperor in martial art to be able to enter the academy. The goal of the academy was to nurture a first heaven immortal king, at the very least. And it was basically impossible for a king to step into this level. However, every student of the St. Source Academy was allowed to have their own followers and establish their own forces. Perhaps those important figures were also considering that when they fought against the dark forces in the future, every student who stepped into the immortal king realm would be able to have their own subordinates and increase their strength. Therefore, the Green Man and the other two could follow Lu Jun into the St. Source Academy. Just this point alone attracted countless martial artists who didn't want to enter the St. Source Academy now. Trash. Trash. All of you are trash. Lu Jun lost his temper the moment he returned to his residence. St. Source Academy was jointly created by 22 Ninth Heaven Immortal Kings. Naturally, it was extremely extraordinary. Not only was it extraordinarily large, but they had also moved many mountains from the celestial realm. Not only was it extraordinarily large, but they had also moved many mountains from the celestial realm. Not only was there abundant spiritual chi, but it also had a unique element. There was a metal element mountain. If one lived on it and comprehended, it would be extremely beneficial for cultivating the regulations of metal. Similarly, there was a water element mountain covered in ice and snow, and a water dragon coiled around it. There was also a lightning element mountain with incandescent white lightning. Alchemists like Lu Jun lived on a herb mountain. The entire mountain was planted with all kinds of medicinal ingredients, and there were even a few celestial medicines. However, the celestial medicines that could be planted were basically within the 5 elements. For example, even celestial kings could not forcefully capture and plant spatial flowers here. He had a cave abode with abundant spiritual chi. It was beneficial for both cultivation and pill concoction. Green Man and the other two lowered their heads and did not make a sound. What could they say? Indeed, they were not of any use. Instead, because they destroyed the furniture, they increased Lu Jun's debt. However, they also felt very wronged. Heavenly souls were already strong enough. Even the top geniuses of the academy had just broken through to the immortal palace tier, and heavenly souls were not strong enough. However, the truth was so bloody that the 3 of them had no room to argue. After Lu Jun threw a tantrum, he slowly calmed down. This enmity must be avenged, he said. Of course, putting everything else aside, he could not just let go of the 150 million star stones that Ling Han had swindled away. That was all the wealth that he had painstakingly earned over the past tens of millions of years. Just thinking about it made his heart ache so much that he wanted to vomit blood. This guy should be a heavenly soul emperor tier, he speculated. Otherwise, it would not have been so easy to capture him from the hands of Green Man and the other two. According to the rules of the St. Source Academy, only emperor tiers have the right to participate in the selection. However, he has opened a medicine shop here, which means that he did not pass the selection. Otherwise, I would have known about such a person. Since that is the case, I will ask a heavenly soul emperor to act. He should be able to easily suppress him. It just so happens that Gu Yushu is begging me to help him refine the secret building pill. If I ask him to act, he will definitely not refuse. All right, I'll ask him to act. Though she said she was going shopping, Hunyeo ran back by herself first. So boring. She complained the moment she entered, saying how the food here was not tasty. Just as she was complaining fiercely, she heard a cold laugh. Lu Jun had returned. Han Lin, he said darkly. After suffering a loss, he naturally clearly investigated Ling Han's background. How many things have you swindled from me? Not only do I want you to return them all, I want you to double it. Ling Han's ears were about to split open from Hunyeo's ravaging. When he saw Lu Jun suddenly appear, he could not help but be overjoyed. This was a good person who had come to his rescue. He shook his head at Hunyeo, indicating that now was the time to get down to business. Hunyeo was already in a bad mood in the first place, so she immediately turned her head around and glared fiercely at Lu Jun. It was true that Lu Jun was a genius in alchemy, but he did not have much special talent in martial arts, so his heart of martial arts was naturally not very strong. Being glared at by Hunyo like this, he instantly took a few steps back, almost falling on his butt. He did not sit down, not because he had overcome the chill in his heart, but because a hand reached out from behind and pressed on his back, stopping him from making a fool of himself. This was a handsome young man dressed in white, his hair thick and jet black, each strand exuding a divine light, as if he was a celestial being. However, handsome was handsome, but his face was full of arrogance. He cast a glance at Ling Han and said, "Take out all the money you swindled from me, and double the compensation. I'll cut off one of your arms, and this matter will be considered settled. The extra arm is because you made me act." He pointed at his chest. "When I, Gu Yushu, attack, there is never a reason that I don't see blood. Crazy, really crazy enough." Ling Han could not help but be full of interest, and asked Lu Jun, "Where did you find this idiot? Very funny. No more saved manuscripts. Write 1 chapter, update 1 chapter." You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.